Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is. Thank you for joining us 1 hour later than usual. As you can see, we were moving all day today, but we've got boxes everywhere and a bunch of business to attend to today. In fact, moments ago, the president was just out signing an executive order on mail-in balloting. So we got the latest update from the White House. They just posted the full summary of exactly what this new executive order will do. We'll take a look at that and see what the president had to say from the Oval Office today. But not until we go through the latest in Fulton County, Georgia, because now we have the state election board who has submitted an amicus brief to come in and essentially convince the judge that there are serious problems here, that the probable cause affidavit that was submitted to the judge to execute the search warrant is filled with probable cause and is worthy of enabling and allowing the FBI to maintain the pallets full of ballots. We'll take a look at that amicus brief and see what the latest is from the judge. We were wondering if we were going to get a decision today. We did not, but he did issue an order about both sides meeting and conferring, and so we'll unpack that. We've got a ballroom update, a Bush-appointed judge, a guy who looks like one of those ogres from one of those Ernest movies, if you remember those. He came out and he said that the ballroom is blocked, but Trump has wasted no time. The appeal is already underway. We'll take a look at that. And there were a bunch of headlines flying around about the Tyler Robinson case and Charlie Kirk. We got the documents. We'll take a look at them so that we can see what the primary source ultimately says. We know that there are a lot of headlines that are perverted on these things. The case is still early. We've seen virtually no evidence presented, but we do have some murmurings of what is to come. So we'll go through all of that and more. It's great to be with you. My name is Robert Gouveia. This is Watching the Watchers. We're grateful for you being here. Thank you for subscribing, liking the video, and all of the things. We got some serious business to attend to today, so let's get right to it. Starting here in Fulton County, Georgia. The Georgia State Election Board now submitting an amicus brief saying, Judge, you absolutely have to enable the FBI and the DOJ to keep those ballots. Pallets full of ballots were already seized. And now the board of Fulton County, the commissioners, they want those ballots back. And they brought in some of the most high-powered Democrat lawyers that we've covered here, guys like Abby Lowell and Norm Eisen, to come out and help them get those ballots returned to their possession. But remember that we've seen some very interesting people who have been on this for quite some time. And the Georgia Election Board is a body of people who've been investigating this for some time. And so I wanted to just share this with you, some names. They submitted this into the court. And the amici, the friends of the court, they're not a party to the case, but they're saying, hey, we're another government entity who's been on this case for a long time. Judge, you don't know anything about it, but we do. And now we're all coming in here to make our voices heard. We've got Janice Johnson. We've got Janelle King. Sally Grubbs are present members of the Georgia State Election Board. They're on the board right now. We also have Rick Jafaris, a former Georgia state senator and former member of the Georgia State Election Board. We got Mark Wingate, Michael Heekin, former members of Fulton County and Elections and Registration, and this other guy called David Hancock, Roy McLean, Charlene Alexander. They are members of election boards of other counties whose citizens are also impacted by the Fulton County fraud. If you're in a different county over, maybe your county's not as problematic as Fulton County is, but if they rig the election, it's one of the biggest counties in Georgia, if not the biggest, and that means that their votes are now disproportionately impacted and may not count. So each has authorized the filing of this brief. So we got a whole slew of people that are coming in here to tell the judge, accept our position and listen to our words because they matter. We've been covering this for a long time and there's a lot of juicy bits right in here. So the prospective amici, they say to the judge, this is the motion of current and former Georgia election officials to join the case. And we support the probable cause affidavit and we oppose the Democrats' attempt to get those ballots back. So here's what they say. We are current and former election officials in Georgia, including a majority of the members of the existing state election board. And we've covered many of those hearings and seen how focused and intent they are on getting to the bottom of this. They have spent, they write, considerable effort and many volunteer hours in ensuring the integrity and the transparency of the, quote, voting system in Georgia. I love that. The voting system, in quotes, because that's what it is. In Georgia, the amici have been recognized for their expertise in election issues by their appointment to these boards over long periods of time. And we are concerned with the well-known and well-documented irregularities arising out of the 2020 general election in Georgia, and we write to support the DOJ's efforts to ensure fair and transparent elections in Georgia. Now, these actions by the DOJ to ensure that the constitutional rights of Georgia voters are actually treated equally are, in our view, absolutely necessary to reinstill confidence in Georgia's election system with the citizens of Georgia and the rest of us, because Georgia was a key state back in 2020. It had the water main break, and then all of a sudden, guess what? Joe Biden wins by about 12,000 votes. So amici are immediate past and current members of the board. We've been involved in a bunch of these cases. We are very familiar with the irregularities here, identified in the affidavit written by Special Agent Ray Evans. But our collective efforts have not provided any answers to the numerous questions that we have collectively raised over, look at this, they did the math, 5 years, 4 months, and 23 days. They know how to count time and days. They can count, which is not something that's common for the Board of Commissioners. As documented in our brief, our efforts have not been met with compliance by Georgia or with the laws as written, but it has been obstruction by county and state officials against any attempt to investigate these irregularities. Even for members of the Georgia State Board, we have a legislated, mandated duty to investigate this, and they're still not complying with them. Fulton County is not complying with the state body who is trying to get to the bottom of this. So we could not have anticipated, they say, potential amici, they're asking the judge for permission to get in here, could not have anticipated that the actions of the DOJ in seeking to enforce its rights to inspect election documents could have been met with the same opposition that we faced as state and county election officials. They're now suing to get their ballots back. So it's like nobody can oversee them at all because the judges protect them everywhere you look. Even guys like Scott McAfee, who donated to Big Fannie Willis, had to get overturned by the Supreme Court. So the judges at every turn are stopping this from actually being investigated. This court's decision on March 20th to conduct an evidentiary hearing on March 27th impels our interest. We have to get this relevant information to you. This information may not otherwise be available as this court examines that information before it, particularly with respect to information already in the record that is either incorrect or misleading. Now, the amici, that's us, we have had unique experience in these investigations, the irregularities alleged, and the need for documentary evidence to investigate a violation of state laws and other laws. Much of this information may not be available to you, Judge, or to the DOJ, or, of course, the Board of Commissioners know what they've done, but they're not going to give it to you. So you can't know this. Right now, we're at a procedural stage of the current investigation, and so we're asking to be allowed in. Signed by Dr. Janice Johnson. And let me see if I can grab a photo of her for us so you can see who we're talking about here. Dr. Janice Johnson, amazing woman. She's right here. We've seen her sitting up there on the podium trying to investigate these things. And a nice, kind of soft-spoken woman who's just trying to get to the bottom of the fraud. So she's the one who is filing this with a bunch of other people in Georgia. Now, it starts. They say, we are past members of the board, and other people have been affected by this abusive conduct. Now, they're saying that the special agent, Ray Evans, is an idiot. And he created an affidavit that is completely without merit and doesn't actually establish probable cause, even though the judge said it did. So each of us have experience in this, and we have been investigating a lot of the same things. And we are concerned because the continued presence of interested parties who have conflicted interests in establishing fair and transparent voting systems, and because some of the information being presented to this court as fact is not correct, and perhaps it's intentionally misleading. You're kidding. Now, of course, we have, obviously a lot of concerns with this. I think the conflict of interest is manifest. Why? On one hand, if you rig an election that you win, then you have power, right? You are in power. You get the benefit of your fraud. So if that's one reason why having you investigate yourself is a problem. And secondarily, if you, let's say, did not ultimately win, or you were not a part of this investigation, or of the election, in other words, you didn't benefit from the fraud directly, but your job is to run actual free and fair elections, and you didn't do that, then that means that we are uncovering your incompetence or your willfulness in enabling the fraud. And so your interest is in investigating yourself and finding that you did nothing at all wrong. So we have sought many of the same documents that the DOJ is now trying to get. We have, without access to those documents that we have not been able to get, we can't even do our legislatively mandated duties. So the other people of Georgia have voted these people in, or voted their appointments, voted the people who made their appointments in, and created an entire body. And now that body can't even investigate. So we need to conduct investigations. We need to make recommendations for the state legislature and more. Now, we note at the outset, writes the SEB, the State Election Board, that the Fulton County Board of Registration and Elections is the owner of the documents at issue, and that the clerk of the court is the appropriate custodian, the two bodies. We are also concerned by the expressions of possessory interest of Fulton County, Georgia. Okay, all these people in the case have come in here. Fulton County Board of Registration and Elections, Fulton County, Georgia. Like, what is that? You're just the county? Is that like an agency? You've got the Board of Commissioners, Rob Pitts and the rest of them. You've got the clerk of the Superior Court. They're saying, who is this exactly? Fulton County, Georgia? You mean like the geographic body? Is that an agency? What is that? So they say, we have a problem with that. They say that they have some sort of interest in this. And elections in Georgia, they write, are operating under the exclusive authority of the General Assembly. They have delegated a bunch of those duties over to the SEB, that's us, under this provision, Local Act number 250 back in 1989, and to the FCBRE, which is a state entity, not a county entity. But notwithstanding this, we note that the clerk of the court has recently joined in here, and they have come in, Che Alexander, and she says, I'm a neutral party. I don't have an opinion on either side of this. So the point is, I think, that the people who are claiming to have an exclusive right to these ballots so that they can go fight to get them back actually don't, or there's overlapping jurisdiction, and the SEB is a part of that. So we have conducted investigations and overseen election issues as directed by law, and have attempted to review many of the documents that the DOJ wants. And as with the DOJ, we have been frustrated in all our polite and lawful requests for review of the documents, even when the documents were literally ordered to be produced by the court or available electronically with the push of a button. We can't get them. There is very little personal information that needs any privacy protection. There is no protected personal information in the documents that we seek that is not routinely the subject of investigation. There are no valid concerns being expressed with respect to the review of these documents by licensed investigators. So there is no reason for the expressions of shock that are exhibited by the Fulton fraudsters, who continue to obstruct the investigations by manufactured claims of outrage over normal government oversight. Why are they outraged so much? Methink the fanny doth protest too much. That's why. The amici have a direct and substantial interest in this matter and the proper legal conduct of our elections. And Fulton County has a responsibility as well to preserve and maintain the records. Now, we're in oversight positions, and we have sought access to these records repeatedly, but they were constantly delayed, obstructed, or refused. And in all instances, they have been denied access to information to which they were either entitled. There were obstruction and delaying legal tactics. Cases have been in litigation for years on stupid issues like standing, finally reversed by the Supreme Court. But we still have not obtained the records in that case after more than 5 years. The goal is to just stall it out and bleed them out. So now the SEB, we have failed to fulfill our duties for the proper care, or in this case, the petitioners. We're kind of, I think, jumping both places. So plaintiffs in their lawsuit, they were suing Fulton County to get the records. They can't get it after 5 years. Now back to this lawsuit, the Fulton County petitioners have failed to fulfill their duties for proper care and custody of and access to the public records. They have intentionally obfuscated issues by claiming spurious privacy issues, asserting dictatorial claims of unaccountability, and needlessly spending hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars to avoid any accountability. And so we're coming here as a friend of the court, and we are endorsing the report that was filed by the FBI special agent called Evans in connection with the probable cause affidavit. And here's exactly why, Judge. You need to know these things. Issues with respect to the conduct of 2020 were present in all counties in Georgia even before the close of the polls back on Election Day. But they reached a crescendo in Fulton County. On election night, one of the amici who's a part of this, Mr. Mark Wingate, who is a Fulton County Board of Registration and Elections member, they were given unsatisfactory responses to the questions raised with respect to the election, including the low turnout of voters on Election Day, which subsequently became a much larger turnout when they needed to shove the ballots in there, and the lack of any signature verification for mail-in ballots, even though signature verification was mandated by the law. The election staff ultimately confirmed to Mr. Wingate that no signature verification, none, had been done in the 2020 general election. Wow. His questions about the accuracy of the voter registration files were never answered. And this is not crazy, by the way. Okay, we saw this in multiple other states. Signature requirements was too complicated back during the COVID era, because if you check the signature, then you have a problem whereby you might have to reject the signature, and that's disenfranchising somebody. So that was a big problem for them, so they just waved them in. In fact, I believe it was Wisconsin. I'd have to double check this. But there was one county that let you just go register online, and a bunch of people registered online, and then they got sued, and they stopped doing that. So in 2020, mail-in ballots in the general election in Fulton, that accounted for almost 150,000 ballots in Fulton County, or almost 30% of the total. The 2020 election was unique because of COVID was going to kill everybody, with many more mail-in votes than normal, and many more absentee ballots and absentee ballot applications mailed than would normally be the case. Yeah. In the first election in which drop boxes were used, there were allegations of impropriety in the use of those drop boxes. They were abounding, and they have not been addressed. The Secretary of State entered into a consent decree, which we saw this happened all the time, okay? You had Democratic entities, the Retired Alliance of America, and the League of Women Voters, blah, blah, blah. All these 501c3s, all operating, filing lawsuits. They would sue the secretaries, and it would be like this friendly patty cake game. The secretaries would then turn around and say, well, yeah, you're right. It is an emergency. And all the governors were issuing statewide emergencies so they could do whatever they want, including locking you in your homes, throwing you out of your businesses, having the cops show up to your residence or to your place of worship, for crying out loud, whatever they wanted. So then the secretaries would enter, they'd get sued by a friendly entity, and then enter into a consent decree, making signatures by individuals and the verifications even more convoluted than normal. Mr. Wingate and Dr. Kathleen Ruth, in other words, and these agreements by the secretaries and these plaintiffs were usurping power away from the actual legislature that governs time, place, and manner of the elections. The manner was being subverted by these consent decrees. The secretaries were unconstitutionally entering into them, bypassing the regular rules that were already on the books. And the governors were like, well, you know, it's an emergency. So whatever, do whatever you want. Thing was ridiculous. Mr. Wingate and Dr. Kathleen Ruth, another member of the board, were appropriately alarmed by this. Now, because the questions that were asked by Dr. Ruth and Mr. Wingate remained unanswered, each of them voted not to certify the results of Fulton County. But the election was certified over their objections because that was the goal across the country. You can't object or else you are a fascist. You're trying to steal the election. Mr. Wingate has subsequently been asked to give depositions and affidavits in ongoing litigation over these unresolved and unsolved issues, despite the fact that he resigned from the board more than 3 years ago. Another guy called Michael Heekin, a former member who served on the FCBRE, more recently also joins this brief. He says, yeah, there are problems. We need to investigate. David Hancock is a member of the Gwinnett County Election Board. Roy McLean is a member of the Spalding County Elections Board. Charlene is over in Fayette. Hancock and McLean and others also have an interest because their counties are being denied equal protection. Okay, if Fulton can shove in fake ballots, then that diminishes their ballots. It should be one person, one vote, not one person, two votes, or one person, three votes, or one Democrat ballot collector who has 100 votes. That means that they have more voting rights than a single person in these other counties, and they're being abused. So these others are current members of the SEB. We got Janice Johnson. We saw a photo of her, Janelle King, and Sally Grubbs, who are all there. They are currently seeking access to the very documents at issue in order to investigate this. And look at some of these claims. They say, these are uninvestigated issues. Remember, they tell us all the time, we investigate. Okay, we did an audit, so just shut up and stop being a fascist. One complaint to the SEB, the state election board, the amici on this, alleged numerous violations, including serious allegations of ballot stuffing, duplicate ballots, missing ballot images, gone. Another complaint alleged the failure to maintain certified records, which are tabulator tapes for early voting. And guess what? 316,000 ballots, or 60% of all ballots cast in Fulton County, had a problem. No tabulator tapes. Law says you have to have that. They say, well, you know, it's an administrative error and it's not intentional. Okay. So yet another complaint, which was actually validated by Governor Brian Kemp, noted that the batch cover sheets in the election recounts had been falsified to add nearly 7,000 votes to the totals based on non-existent ballots. During the course of these complaints, Nadine Williams, the executive director of the FCBRE at the time, confirmed that she said all ballot images from election day were deleted, gone. Sloppy records management is one thing, but actually deleting the election records is a violation of state and federal law. Why did they do that? Well, because the digital votes wouldn't have matched the physical votes, and they had to get rid of one side of the other so that you could not cross-reference and index those. Then there was another complaint. Look at this one, SEB 2023-025, filed July 8, 2022. That alleged that there were 17,800 missing ballot images, gone. An assessment that was confirmed by election law experts at the University of California, Berkeley, and the University of South Carolina. Dr. Johnson has reviewed the electronic files confirming the count of the missing ballot images, but cannot verify whether there are missing ballots without actually seeing the ballots. So the images deleted, you have to cross-reference those with the physical ballots. Otherwise, you might have a digital inflation problem or a digital deflation problem, but you can't validate it because they're deleted. Then there was another one, SEB 025. It also verified that there were 3,930 duplicated ballots apparently created by selecting portions of previously scanned batches to create new batches of ballots, which were then shoved through the machines a second time. Ballots duplicated in this manner would indicate intentional conduct to add ballots to the recount. But that cannot be verified for investigation without actually looking at the ballots. Without more information, standards for future recounts cannot be identified. Now, they also noted, look at this number, that 20,713 ballots were counted as votes, despite the fact that there was no or scant evidence of the provenance of those ballots. Where'd they come from? That provenance cannot be confirmed or denied without further review of those ballots, the numbered voter list, and possibly more information that has not yet been found. And what was the margin in Georgia? About 11,800 votes. So something like that shifts the numbers. Now, many of these complaints were not evident until after the cast vote records were released by Fulton County in mid-2021, after Joe Biden was well ensconced in the White House. And the complaints to the board were held up in an investigation by Brad Raffensperger and his investigative staff all the way till 2024. And what happened with many of those people who were investigating it? Oh yeah, Vic Reynolds, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations lead, he got made a judge by Brian Kemp after he delivered the results that the governor and the secretary wanted. Guess who else got appointed to be the judge? Oh yeah, Scott McAfee, after he was investigating it. So they took him out after they did their jobs and they made them permanent judges, put him on the payroll forever. You're a judge. You'll be on the Supreme Court one day. Just shut up and okay. Yeah, okay, sure, that sounds good. So there has been, and by the way, Scott McAfee donated to Big Fanny. There has been no explanation as to why so many complaints filed with the SEB were backlogged in the Secretary of State for many years, Brad. Further, when the Secretary of State's general counsel, called Charlene McGowan, presented the results of the investigation, she falsely claimed, some might say lied, that the ballot images were not retained because they were not required to be retained or maintained in the 2020 election. False. Later, she refused to allow Dr. Johnson to review the files that contain the ballot images from the recount unless Dr. Johnson agreed to close the investigation. I'll let you look at it, but if you find anything, you can't do anything with it. Dr. Johnson did not agree to that demand, and after much resistance, she was able to review the electronic files in a confined space on a dedicated terminal without access to, quote, the exhibit that had initially been made a part of their report. So they shove her in a skiff. She can't see anything. What she saw in that environment shocked her, as the files had been modified after the election. Why'd they have to do that? The vast majority of the precinct counts did not match the reported totals, and the files had been visibly altered after the election. Many were missing the required SHA file, the secured hashtag algorithm that are needed to verify that the files had not been modified. You have a digital file, you run it through an algorithm, and it spits out a fingerprint. Then if you get into the file and you do a little Photoshop in there and you take a little, cut this out and put a little 1 instead of a 2 there and change the things. Then if you run it through the same algorithm, it produces a different fingerprint. And you say, oh, that's different. Somebody messed with the files. Miss Julie Adams is also a current member of the BRE in Fulton, and she has repeatedly asked for documentation to validate the elections that she has had responsibility to supervise. Because she asked for clarification from the courts as to whether she was required to certify an election when she had no basis for doing so, Rob Pitts retaliated against her, the same guy who launched this lawsuit to get those ballots returned. Her exercise of a right to legal redress and refused to reappoint her back to the board. She wasn't playing nice. You wanted to get some answers. They said, that's too bad. You're throwing you off the board. Get out of here. October 4, 2024, and again on November 5, 2025, the state election board, the people who were behind this amici, they issued subpoenas, the first and second subpoenas respectively, to the Fulton County Board under Georgia law. But rather than complying with the first subpoena, the executive chairman and director, without authorization from the rest of the board, filed a lawsuit to quash that subpoena. After more than a year of litigation, the board, through counsel, made an offer to comply with the first subpoena by copying the documents and sending a bill for $435,000 over back to the SEB. No, they can't afford that, so just hit them with this. So the FCBRE has not responded to the second subpoena, and they've ignored the legal process altogether, which is so bizarre. If it's like a gold standard election, here's your files. Here, take a look, idiots. Come look in here. You see it's conspiracy theory completely. We'll post the whole thing on the internet. But it's not. The SEB's position, the people who are here, has been and remains that this demand for compensation is unreasonable because these documents were already required to be maintained under election code. And their response has been mercurial and is a cause of great frustration. And that's why we need the search warrant, Judge. Listen, after initial claims concerning standing, sovereign immunity, and state agency three-card Monty all failed, who is the correct party for the lawsuit? They then claimed their request was burdensome because it would require them to search more than 750 boxes or more than 700 boxes. And so the calculations of the cost for such a search have varied based on the number of boxes that have been identified as needing to be searched. In any event, it appears that only 653 boxes, not 750, not 700, were turned over in response to the search warrant, which we assume have been inventoried as required by federal law when you seize property. In other litigation, the clerk, Che Alexander, has confirmed through counsel that not all boxes of 2020 election materials were seized. But no one, including Mr. Pitts, the clerk, or the board, has explained why material was retained or given an inventory explaining the volume of the retained material. And some of that, I wonder if some of it's primary materials. So 2020 election materials, is it the primary stuff? Is it the general stuff? What's the full scope? and the scale. Now, this experience raises concerns about truthfulness and possible financial misrepresentation. Certainly, there is no confidence in their capacity to engage in basic record keeping because they don't want to have record keeping. The fraud, the gray area is where the grift resides. In addition, the board has made false and misleading claims to us about the functionalities of election equipment. These claims and the aforementioned claims with respect to the lack of any requirement to retain the ballot images, even though the law says they have to, has been repeated. They keep saying it. They keep making sworn declarations and just lie. Petitioners' conduct demonstrates what they've done, a callous disregard for the maintenance of the records under Georgia law and federal law. In fact, the judge right now is trying to apply the standard. Did the DOJ and the FBI have a callous disregard for Fulton and the board? No, it's the opposite. They have been callously disregarding our election laws, the rights of the citizens of Fulton County and other counties, and a disregard for the Constitution. The resistance to basic oversight is inconsistent with a government that's accountable to the people. This weighs heavily against their relief, and this is a necessary investigation. Judge, if you return the materials, that would risk loss, alteration, and further delay. Public confidence requires preservation of evidence and independent review. This has been true since the founding of our republic and is especially true now. The government's retention at the DOJ of these materials advances those interests, and we support the dismissal of the board and their demand for the files back, signed by Dr. Janice Johnson, here certified. And let's see what else we've got here. They write, the experience raises concerns of truthfulness and also possible financial representation. They've made misleading claims, and we need an independent review. And I think that might just be a duplicate, got scanned twice. So very nice filing here from the Georgia State Election Board. And the numbers are shocking. The obstruction is shocking. If they were a legitimate body, why would they just not comply with the DOJ now seizing the ballots? And of course, a state election board. Yeah, look at my work. Look at my homework. I've done an amazing job. I'm very proud of our election. They're not. It's riddled with fraud. We know Raffensperger or the secretary at the time, entered into settlement agreements to pervert the rules, and the election was a disaster. Now they're trying to get their ballots back, and we're happy to see the SEB jumping into the fray. Hopefully the judge hears their message. Now, on the case, we saw the latest order came down. We were wondering if we were going to get an official ruling on the merits about who keeps the ballots that have been seized, but the judge hasn't done that. Yesterday, we took a look at the motion by Norm Eisen and Abby Lowell and some other Democrat hack lawyers. They said, Judge, we found new evidence. Look at these emails. The judge was being perverted by the DOJ, and now you should give us the ballots back, blah, blah, blah. So they say, we want answers to all these questions. We want this. They're trying to delay. They didn't like, I think, what happened at the hearing, so they went back to the judge and said, Judge, before we can continue on with this, you got to help us get more discovery. Instead of just denying us, let us continue to investigate. So the judge is buying it. He says, okay, the court is in receipt of the Fulton fraudsters' motion to supplement the record. So the parties are ordered to meet and confer about the motion to determine whether the respondent agrees to give the responses. So is the DOJ going to give them what they asked for? You guys get together, hash it out. You shall inform the court of the results no later than Friday, April 3rd by 5 p.m., so ordered by the judge. So the internal battle continues. The discovery fight will continue on, and we'll get a ruling from the judge, not this week, probably. So we'll allow this to kind of just go back and forth, delay. And we'll see ultimately what the decision is. But of course, we're going to keep our eye on this one. Fulton fraudsters now slammed by the state election board and by some amazing people like Janice, who is here doing amazing work out there on the board. So we'll keep our eye on this one. Thank you for subscribing and joining us as we do. Now, got some other major business that just dropped today. And this is what we're seeing here from the president. President Trump now signing an election executive order. Those mail-in ballots will not be as fraudulent if he has anything to say about it. This just dropped on the White House website, now signed by number 47 himself, ensuring citizenship verification and integrity in federal elections. And you can already hear the lib lawyers typing away, getting ready for the lawsuits to fly first thing tomorrow morning. I guarantee it. But he says, by authority vested in me as president, including other congressional laws like the HAVA, Help America Vote Act. Congress passed it. The National Voter Registration Act. Congress passed that too. Trump says, it is hereby ordered the following will be happening. He gives us some purpose and policy. He says the right to vote is reserved exclusively for citizens of the United States. Federal law explicitly prohibits non-citizens from registering. Social Security keeps a list, Homeland keeps a list, and there's a SAVE program, not the Save America Act, that's called the Systemic and Systematic Alien Verification for Entitlements Program. And so now what we're going to be doing is invoking these laws to change some policies to ensure that the illegal aliens are not voting anymore. Now, let me share with you what went down in the Oval Office, because the president was out today making this announcement, and here is what he said.
Well, thank you very much. This was a meeting set up very proudly by us, having to do with voter integrity and mail-in ballots and stopping the massive cheating that's gone on. And so we're going to be signing an executive order. It's, I believe it's foolproof, and maybe it'll be tested, maybe it won't. I think it's very obvious what's said. And I'll ask Will Scharf to start off, attorney, a great talent, a very brilliant young man, and if you could discuss it, and then I'm going to ask Howard Lutnick to say a few words, and then I'm going to sign it, and we'll take a couple of questions. Okay? Thank you.
Mr. President, as you said, you have in front of you an executive order that deals with a number of issues relating to election integrity. As you've consistently identified, two of the biggest problems we have with election integrity in this country are, one, inaccurate voter rolls that allow ineligible people to vote in various federal and state elections all over the country. And secondarily, you've consistently identified that vote by mail in this country has become rife with fraud. People returning ballots who aren't eligible to return ballots, ballots being sent to people who aren't confirmed to be eligible voters. So what this executive order is going to do is, one, we're going to take federal data. We're going to ensure that each state's election officials are provided with a comprehensive view of who the eligible voters in their jurisdiction actually are, allowing them to properly verify that everybody voting in their elections is legally able to vote. And then it orders the Postmaster General and the U.S. Postal Service to take bold new measures to verify that ballots both being sent to people are being sent to people who are eligible to vote, and then the ballots being returned or being properly returned by eligible voters only. And we believe that combined, the measures in this executive order will help secure elections in the future and ensure that the many abuses of our election system in the past aren't repeated in future elections.
Right. Howard?
So the fundamentals of our democracy are built on voter integrity, right? We all need it. You've said it time and time again. It's a total agreement amongst everybody. So here's the idea. The states, right, run these elections. They will, if they want to use the U.S. mail, U.S. Postal Service, they're going to get a code, a barcode from the U.S. Postal Service, and they're going to put that on the envelope, and we will have one envelope per vote. None of this time where we have no idea, there's no observers to mail, there's no envelopes, there's no certainty. That's all going to go away, and what the president is doing today is he's going to make sure that mail-in ballots are safe, secure, and accurate, and will have a clear distinction. If you voted by mail, you will have it on the envelope. Obviously not on the ballot, but on the envelope. So we will know 1 million mail-in ballots. There'll be 1 million envelopes, and you'll be able to know exactly, correctly, that citizens voted.
And this came up with some great legal minds. They looked at the various documents and everything that was going on, because the cheating on mail-in voting is legendary. It's horrible what's gone on. And it's very clearly covered, very, very clearly. So I think this will help a lot with elections. We'd like to have voter ID. We'd like to have proof of citizenship, and that'll be another subject for another time. We're working on that. You would think it would be easy. It's a 98% issue for Republicans. It's 86%. The thing just came out, a poll, and it's 86% with Republicans and Democrats, not leaders, because the leaders of the Democrats cheat.
Yeah, they don't want that to
And the only people
change.
that don't want to do voter ID are people that cheat. There's no other reason for it. Proof of citizenship, they want to be able to cheat. There's no reason. They have all sorts of reasons, excuses, but it's all nonsense. They want to cheat. But the Democrats themselves are very high. It's a very positive, very, very good thing. The Democrat voters, the Democrat leaders, guys like Schumer, who are corrupt, they want to use it for cheating because their policy is so bad with, think of their policy, open borders for everybody, where people pour into our country from countries all over the world. Think of that. You look at, just take any issue, take anything, everything they have is so crazy. But the fact that they don't want to sign voter ID is another issue. It's a big issue. The fact that they don't have proof of citizenship, that they want transgender for everybody, that they want men in women's sports. So the only way, they assume, the only way they can win is to cheat. When you have men in women's sports, it's fine, it's wonderful. By the way, I worked very hard with the Olympic Committee and got that terminated for the Olympics. Very nice. Now, girls won't have to get beat up in the boxing ring like they did last time. If you saw those fights, two people that transitioned beat the hell out of everyone, out of other people, women. It was not a pretty sight to watch. So I worked very hard with the Olympic Committee, and we were able to get that out. So the Olympics will not have men in women's sports. But these are the things that they vote on, and that's why we're having a problem with them. They don't want ICE because they don't want people to be taken out of our country that are murderers, that are drug dealers, and that are people from mental institutions, the criminally insane. These are not nice people. And,
Give them a ballot, though. That's okay.
It's amazing. I just, it's not even believable. If you go back 12, 13, 15, 20 years, that we even have to bring up a subject like there will be no trans mutilation. We don't want any transgender mutilization of our children. We don't want to have people pouring into our country from other countries all over the world, where prisons are opened up all over the world. They're opened up, and they pour into our country. Murderers, 11,888 murderers. Think of that. We got many of them out. And by the way, Washington, D.C. just set a new record for safety, and I'm sure you know that.
Nice.
Because, Peter, when you walk down the street, you're not mugged lately. But it's a very safe city now. We took great pains to make it that way, but it actually happened pretty quickly. Within 3 months, it was good. Within 4 months, it was very good. Within 5 months, it was great. Now it's better than it ever was. And so Washington, D.C. is now considered a very, very safe city. We removed almost 4,000 people, just so you understand. You know, an interesting stat is that 2% of the people create more than 90% of the crime. And the good thing about that is when you get rid of 2%, it's not that many, you don't have a lot of crime.
Right.
But Washington, D.C., we're very proud of. We're very proud of Memphis, Tennessee, and Louisiana. New Orleans is unbelievable. They had the safest, they just finished their Mardi Gras. They had the safest Mardi Gras in 58 years. The governor just called me. Jeff Landry just called me. He said, it's the safest Mardi Gras in 58 years because of us. And really, Chicago should call and say we'd like help. New York should call. They've had a lot of problems that we want help. Los Angeles should call and probably will. I think they have to. Now, we're going to have to do something when it comes World Cup time, and we're going to have to force ourselves upon them, which we have the right to do, because we don't want to have any crime. We don't want to have any problems for the Olympics and the World Cup, and even for 250. So with all of that, I'm very happy to be signing the voter integrity, and
Let's do it.
I think it's going to be really great. So if you don't mind, I will take some time.
We don't mind,
and I'll
Mr.
make the
President.
signature absolutely perfect. So it looks very good. So far, so good.
Beautiful sound.
Okay, so that's a big deal.
Yeah, let's do it.
Very proud of it. And I think, I don't know how it can be challenged. probably challenge it. You may find a rogue judge. You get a lot of rogue judges.
There'll be them.
Very bad people, very bad judges. But that's the only way that can be changed, and hopefully we'll win on appeal if it is. But I don't see how anybody can challenge it.
Beautiful.
I don't see how they can challenge it.
All right, let's take a look at what's inside that beautiful document here. So we've got the purpose and the policy. We got a couple of things that are being established here. And you can see it's not too long. We got some enforcement, some implementation stuff. Let's see what the highlights are. So they've got, obviously, the purpose and the policy is to make sure our elections are not rigged and that there is integrity, that we've got reliable, auditable mechanisms to ensure that we're actually governing ourselves and that foreigners or fraudsters are not governing us. So they're going to establish and transmit state citizenship lists, saying to the extent feasible and consistent with applicable law, the Secretary of Homeland Security, now Mark Wayne Mullen, through the Director of the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services and in coordination with other people, shall take appropriate action to compile and transmit to the chief election official of each state a list of individuals confirmed to be United States citizens who will be above the age of 18 at the time of an upcoming election and who maintain a residence in that state. So the feds have the lists. So we'll just say this is a list of all the citizens that we think are citizens who are in your state and who reside there. It's going to be called the State Citizenship List, shall be derived from the Federal Citizen and Naturalization Records, SSA records, save data, and other relevant databases. The citizenship list shall be updated and transmitted to state election officials no fewer than 60 days before each regularly scheduled federal election and promptly upon request of any state person. In special elections, the Secretary of Homeland Security shall establish procedures to 1, allow individuals to access their individual records and update or correct them in advance of the election, enable states to routinely supplement and provide suggested modifications or amendments to the state citizenship list. An individual's identification on the list does not indicate that the individual has been properly registered to vote in the state. It's just saying the feds know this person's a citizen. State and federal laws and state procedures must still be followed if you want to register to vote. There may be state laws not reflected in the state citizenship list that preclude voter registration, or the individual may choose not to be registered. But in other words, they're saying, all right, if we can't get your list and check them, we'll give you our list. And if we find that you've got our list and you still enable people to vote who are not on that list, they may be non-citizens because we have a list of all your citizens because we're the federal government. So for the purposes of this order, an individual is eligible to vote if they're going to be 18. The AG shall prioritize the investigation and, as appropriate, the prosecution of state and local officials and any others involved in the administration of elections who issue federal ballots to individuals who are not eligible to vote. Let's go. Because if you want to register to vote and you're an illegal alien, all you do is check a box on the form, or you're not entitled to vote. And you just say, no, it's like a box, that's it. And you're good, and you can't validate it. Similarly, the AG shall prioritize and, as appropriate, the prosecution and investigation of individuals in public or private entities who are aiding and abetting the printing, production, shipment, or distribution of ballots who are not eligible to vote in a federal election. Man, amazing. The unlawful use of mail-in as well. So they're saying the U.S. Postal Service is going to have rulemaking on mail-in and absentee ballots. To ensure faithful execution of federal law, to protect the integrity of the mail as a medium for transmitting election ballots, and to establish uniform standards for mailing or sending absentee ballots through the mail, the Postmaster General is now hereby directed to initiate a proposed rulemaking pursuant to the law and other authority within 60 days of this order. The rulemaking shall include at minimum of the following. 1. Proposed provisions specifying that all outbound ballot mail must be mailed in a special envelope. It must be marked as official election mail, including through designated markings provided by the Postal Service for this purpose, like an official election mail logo as necessary. Is also automation compatible and bears a unique intelligent mail barcode. Oh, they're going to hate this. Or successor USPS technology that facilitates the tracking and is consistent with other requirements of this section. It's like certified mail. Has undergone a mail envelope design review to ensure compliance, including the placement of the barcode. Also, proposed provisions specifying that no fewer than 90 days before a federal election, any state may choose to notify the Postal Service if it intends to allow for mail-in or absentee ballots using the mail. As part of that notification, any notifying state should further indicate whether it intends to submit to USPS, no fewer than 60 days, a list of voters eligible to vote in the election in such a state to whom the state intends to provide a ballot or to be transmitted via the USPS. Also, there are going to be proposed provisions for saying that the Postal Service shall not transmit mail-in or absentee ballots from any individual unless those individuals have been enrolled in a state-specific list under this subsection. Proposed provisions specifying the Postal Service says the Postal Service shall provide each state with a list of individuals who are enrolled and, pursuant to this, who are sending mail-in or absentee ballots. They, along with others, will have a ballot envelope identifier, barcodes, mail-in ballots, and more for all the absentee stuff. Proposed procedures that enables the state to routinely supplement or provide modifications. They shall coordinate with the Inspector General if they find any suspected unlawful use of the mail, and more. Now, Homeland is going to jump into this. The AG shall enforce compliance with this by providing guidance and explaining and administering the distribution of these materials. Homeland Security also shall, within 90 days, establish infrastructure necessary to compile and maintain and transmit the citizenship list that we talked about before. The Commissioner of the Social Security Administration shall provide all necessary citizenship and identity data to Homeland in support of this requirement, of course, following the Privacy Act. The AG, in terms of enforcement, and the heads of all executive agencies shall take all lawful steps to deter and address non-compliance with federal law, including withholding federal funds from non-compliant states. Cut them off. Evidence of violations of any existing federal laws, including any of the instrumentalities thereof, contractors, individuals who administer, public-private entities, who print, ship, distribute the ballots, the printers, the runbacks, all these third-party companies that count and scan and do all of them. You got to comply with this. Otherwise, we're not paying for you. States and localities should preserve for a 5-year period all records and materials, including ballots cast and evidencing voter participating in elections. Also, nothing in this order is going to be impairing anything else, like the OMB. This order is not intended to create any substantive rights. All this is kind of boilerplate language they put at the end of these things. Beautiful development signed by the president, Donald J. Trump, from the White House. He's going to be sued, obviously, into oblivion by the usual suspects. Mark Elias right now is having a meltdown in his house right now. Probably comfort eating, all sorts of things. I don't even want to go there. But that's what the president just signed into law. That's going to be a major shakeup, and elections are right around the corner. They got 60 days, 90 days. Get these things done. I'm certain a federal judge will come in here and stop this, because they stop every single thing, including the ballroom. But this is a step in the right direction. And some states, I think, will absolutely comply with this. So the goal will absolutely be achieved in that it dissuades and disincentivizes a bunch of the fraudsters from continuing to commit the fraud. The printers, the shippers, the counters, all the people in the entire hierarchy of the fraudulent system, you're all on notice. We're going to investigate your booties. And we already know who the citizens are, okay? We're just going to send you the list and remind you that we know who they are. And if you don't do something to prevent the people who are not on that list from voting, we're going to come after you, and your money will be cut off. Here's more from the president, taking some questions after the signing of this historic order.
And remember, it's about voter integrity. We want to have honest voting in our country, because if you don't have honest voting, you can't have really a nation, if you want
That's
to know
right.
the
We don't
truth.
govern
I'll leave
ourselves.
that to you. Do you have any questions, please?
Yes, Mr. President. As you know, there's issues right now with DHS not being funded. Coast Guard is one of them, which is very important, especially for things going on in the Strait of Hormuz and here in our own country. You have the power to transfer control from the Department of Homeland Security to the Navy. Are you considering doing that?
No, I have a lot of powers to do things, and We use the powers where appropriate. Sometimes you don't have to use those powers. You know, they're a little severe. And then people accuse me of being a king. You see, the king, this is the new one. They've been trying for a long time, including 4 years where I was out of office watching how badly this country was run. But they've been trying for a long time. You know what they really are doing is they want to have people coming into our country. They want to have open borders. They want to have criminals coming into our country. They want to have people unchecked, unvetted, coming into our country that you can look at them and say, this is not good. And that's what happened. They allowed 25 million people into our country. Many of those people were criminals. Many of them were drug dealers and murderers and people that were let out of mental institutions, prison populations in some countries. The Congo, almost its entire prison population was allowed to come into the United States of America. The Congo. Many of the countries in South America, they emptied their prisons out into our country. This was under Biden. And nobody can tell me that's a good thing. And yet, they haven't changed their ways, because if they ever took power, they would open up the borders and they would let people pour in and destroy our country. So I have many powers, but I don't have to use them. I mean, only in severe cases. Yeah.
Mr. President, thank you. If you were able to sign the executive order to pay the TSA agents, why not do the same for FEMA and other agencies within the Department of Homeland Security?
Well, FEMA is different, because FEMA, I really believe that it's fine, but I think it's very inefficient. I think, we have smart governors, and one way to tell whether or not they're smart is how well they do. FEMA
Not even asking about this.
A very expensive way of trying to put out a problem. But what I'd rather do is let the states do it and help them financially, but let the states do it. In other words, you'll have a hurricane in Florida, and people will come from Alaska. They haven't been to Florida. By the time they get used to it, problem can be solved. So I've never been a big fan of FEMA. I like to keep it local. I like to see governors and neighboring states help each other, as opposed to FEMA. FEMA is very expensive, and it really doesn't get the job done. In North Carolina, they did a terrible job until I became elected a second time, and I went and we had that tremendous water flood. There was a water hurricane, the likes of which nobody has seen. Land areas that never had lakes all of a sudden had lakes that you couldn't even get to it. And actually, we were helped by Elon Musk with the communication, with his great communication system that worked very well. We were very lucky, saved a lot of lives. But no, we got to do things right. And if you don't do them right, we shouldn't do them at all. Yeah, please.
Thank you, President Trump. After you said today that the Iran war may be ending soon, the stock market closed much higher. Do you have thoughts on that? And also, a judge just ordered you to stop construction of the ballroom.
All right, we're going to come back to the ballroom. So that is a big development. Election executive order saying, we know who the citizens are. We're going to send you the list there, non-compliant states, and it's going to be your obligation to make sure that only people on that list are voting. Otherwise, you're in big trouble. And if you don't want to comply with this, we're just going to cut your money off. And we may prosecute you if you are part of the chain of the fraud that continues to enable the elections to be rigged and stolen by the fraudsters. So we're going to keep our eye on this one. I guarantee you there'll be a bunch of lawsuits, and it will be a lot of fun to watch the DOJ defend this. And we'll see how far we get before the next election occurs. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, now let's talk about the ballroom. And the president, of course, is going to be responding to some of that. There we go. Nope, not that one. That one. President Trump instantly appealed the ballroom decision. We saw that a George Bush judge, this guy right here, he says the president can't even control his own property. Federal judges all over the country saying the president isn't really the president. They're the president now. But now this judge, his name is Richard J. Leon, a judge out of the District of Columbia, says your ballroom is now canceled. But the notice of appeal has already been filed like 5 minutes after the decision came down. DOJ not playing around on this one. The case, of course, National Trust for Historic Preservation in the United States versus the National Park Service. So a plaintiff is a third-party preservation society, and they're suing the NPS. Trump, of course, files the notice of appeal instantly, says we are now appealing this to the D.C. Circuit Court and we'll let them sort it out moving forward. But the president was unhappy about this. He said, the National Trust for Historic Preservation sues me for a ballroom that is under budget, ahead of schedule, being built at no cost to the taxpayer, and will be the finest building of its kind anywhere in the world. I then get sued by them for over the renovation of the dilapidated and structurally unsound former Kennedy Center, now the Trump Kennedy Center, which is a show of bipartisan unity, a Republican and a Democratic president. Unity at last. Where all I am doing is fixing, cleaning, running, and sprucing up a terribly maintained for many years building, but a building of potentially great importance. Yet, they're suing him for those. But the National Trust for Historic Preservation, a radical left group of lunatics whose funding was stopped by Congress in 2005, is not suing the Federal Reserve for a building which has been decimated and destroyed inside and out by an incompetent and possibly corrupt Fed chairman. The once magnificent building is billions over budget, may never be completed, and may never open. All of the beautiful walls inside have been ripped down, never to be built again. But the National Trust for Historic Preservation never did anything about it. Or have they sued on Governor Gavin Newsom's railroad to nowhere in California that is billions over budget and has no track and probably will never open or be used? So the White House Ballroom, the Trump Kennedy Center, which are under budget ahead of schedule and will be among the most magnificent buildings of their kind anywhere in the world, gets sued by a group that was cut off by the government years ago, but all of the many disasters in our country are left alone to die. Doesn't make much sense, does it? No, Mr. President, it doesn't. Signed by President Donald J. Trump. So here, of course, is the guy, Richard J. Leone, and he says, I'm the president now. I'm in charge of building. And he wrote this decision. You see down here, he says the National Trust motion is now granted and the work must stop. And it's a 35-page opinion. I'll just share with you the highlights. You get the gist of it. He says, and this is a weird judge. He uses a lot of exclamation points, okay? You use those like in text messages or emails like, hey, Grace, whoa. But generally not when you're a judge, especially if you're not, wait for it, Ketanji, right? She's the Supreme Court judge, but I guess he's doing that now. He says the president of the United States is the steward of the White House for future generations of first families. He is not, however, the owner. Trump claimed that Congress has given him authority in existing statutes to construct the East Wing. The Historic Society says that he has no authority. I have concluded that the National Trust is going to win because no statute comes close to giving the president authority that he claims to have. So he goes through some background. Congress, he says, authorized funds for construction and maintenance of the White House up until the President Day. But we don't need funds there, Leon. We don't need it at all. It's all privately funded. So I'll just share with you the highlights. We'll go back to Trump. He's going to explain more about what his strategy will be here. The White House said we're going to have a state ballroom. It's going to be 90,000 square feet. Then without advance notice, boom, that dumpster building came crumbling down. After the demolition of the East Wing, the National Trust, a nonprofit of leftist hacks, they came out and they said, you didn't consult us. And we're mad about it. Trump posted a bunch of stuff on the internet, and this guy goes through. He says they sought a second and added a second complaint, and it's all going to be about funding and blah, blah, blah. U.S. Code, National Park Service says we fund this, and there's a legal standard here. And so this case is about whether the president can build a ballroom. And the property clause says Congress only can manage the property, I guess even including the president's residence. So the district clause gives Congress, the property clause gives them the right to apportion money for these things, and Trump is not taking their money and he's not consulting them. So they're going to win, saying that he stepped outside of the Constitution, and he cites a bunch of the constitutional provisions. And what does alteration mean? What does improvement mean? You get the gist of it. So in sum, they asked the court, Trump, to ignore the full text. And this is the nation's property, not the president's property. So Trump comes back and he actually walks us through a nice little strategy here. You can see 35 pages of kind of nonsense and the balance of the equities and the harm. he says, well, this is a ballroom that is going to be bad for us, I guess. The public has an interest in prohibiting this from happening, and they say it's going to imperil national security, says Trump. And another exclamation point. Well, this is your own problem. If there's a large hole in the ground, this is what they want. They do not want the building to go up because it's going to look beautiful and big, and Trump is able to build things, and we can't build anything. We're just people who tear things down. So where does this leave us? Well, unless and until Congress blesses this project, construction has to stop! Exclamation. Congress can approve it. The president may at any time go to Congress to obtain authority and then do it with private funds, but Congress has to give him permission. Congress is a joke. He says, not a bad outcome, that. Just go to Congress and talk to them. So Richard exclamation J. Leon is now saying that Congress needs to approve it. Otherwise, the ballroom has to stop. Now, here was the president asked about this from the Oval Office, and here's what he said.
Are you planning to stop?
Well, we'll appeal that, but it's not, I don't know, it's basically, I mean, I wrote it, a part of his opinion, but basically he's saying I need congressional approval. And he's so wrong. This is being financed privately. It's a donation that's being given by companies, very rich people, so that for 150 years they've wanted a ballroom here. We're going to have the finest ballroom, I believe, anywhere in the world. And he said, we need congressional approval. Well, they don't get congressional approval from the White House. When they do things, they don't, especially when you don't, we didn't ask for any tax money. We have no tax, this is taxpayer free. We have no taxpayer putting up 10 cents. And I see right here, I just wrote it out, he said, we need congressional approval. Well, we built many things at the White House over the years. They don't get congressional approval when they build in the White House. It's totally separate. And especially when it's a donation. I mean, the ballroom is a donation. It's gotten great reviews. People love it. And presidents for 150 years have wanted this ballroom to be built, because when we have President Xi or other presidents or prime ministers coming, we don't have a big room. We have the East Room, which is very small. And he said we need congressional approval. He also said, but this is positive for us, I'm allowed, that meaning we are allowed to continue building as necessary to, let's see, what is that? To cover the safety and security of the White House and its grounds. So it says here very carefully, the safety and security have to be protected of the White House grounds. Well, that's what we're doing, because everything's bulletproof glass, et cetera, including the ballroom. And then it goes construction and all of the things necessary. It says personal safety of the president and his staff are a part of that. So it talks about that we're allowed to continue building. In other words, he put an order on, and even that he gave 14 days. We don't need it, because that's what we're doing. He's allowed to continue building as necessary. And when it talks about the safety and security of the White House and its grounds. So just so you know, I wrote some of the thing down. We have a drone-proof roof, and it talks about the president and his staff. Well, we don't have a lot of bulletproof glass. The White House was built a long time ago. This has the highest level of, in fact, they call this the glass, it's bulletproof and it's ballistic proof. It's very thick. It's like that. And it's going 45 feet high, and every window is covered, every door is covered. The roof is drone proof. We have secure air handling systems. You know, bad things happen in the air if you have bad people. We have bio defense all over. We have secure telecommunications and communications all over. We have bomb shelters that we're building. We have a hospital and very major medical facilities that we're building. We have all of these things. So that's called, I'm allowed to continue building as necessary. So think of that, for the safety of the president. So we have all these things. So on that, we're okay. Where he's totally wrong, and he made statement, that's fine. But I'll give you an example. You have right here, $300 to $400 million, depending on finishes. If I use very expensive marble, if I use very expensive wall coatings, if I could bring it up to 400. Otherwise,
Make it
we're
nice,
right now
Mr.
ahead of
President,
schedule.
yeah.
We're under budget.
They'll hate it.
But depending on finishes, from $300 to $400 million are being given by great people, people that you all know. Rich people, rich companies, big companies. They wanted to see this built because every president, literally for 150 years, has needed a space like this. Many of you have gone to the tent when we have a president of a big country
Looks
or
ridiculous.
somebody being honored of great distinction. And they sit in a tent, and if it rains, you get soaked because the grass gets wet here very fast. It's a wet area. They used to call it a wetland, but I guess they don't do that for the White House, but it's essentially a wetland. And when it rains, you're in trouble. The water can go up to 3 to 4 inches over their shoes. That's not a good feeling for who was Prince Charles, who will be here next couple of weeks, is King Charles, who's a great guy. We don't want him to sit in a pool of water. And they've been wanting this for 150 years, and we're building it, and it's covered perfectly. What's not covered perfectly is the fact that the judge said we need congressional approval. Many things have been built in the White House. They haven't gotten congressional approval, especially when the money is being not put up by the taxpayer. The taxpayer's not putting up a dime. This building was necessary for many years by the fact that I've built many ballrooms, and I built many things, and I know how to build. I'm not building the Federal Reserve where the guy's spending $4 billion for a tiny little building. $4 billion for the Federal Reserve building. That contractor is going to be one of the richest men anywhere in the world after he finishes the Federal Reserve. The man is totally incompetent. Jerome, too late, Powell, is totally incompetent. And he's got to get out of office pretty fast. He's doing a bad job, but he's also done a bad job in shepherding the construction of that building. Do you know they ripped down a part of that building, and it was they say it's one of the nicest buildings in Washington. They ripped it down. So we feel, and we don't feel, we know that congressional approval is not necessary to put up a ballroom. And many things have been built on the site, they've never gotten congressional approval. And especially when the money is all put up. This is all donations by people that love our country, that love the White House, and that feel it was very necessary.
Mr. President, a couple of questions for you on Iran, but first one that affects Americans here at home, gas prices.
All right, so that's on the ballroom. Trump, I think, is saying we're going to keep building this thing because we've got some additional time to do that. And it's for a national security reason. And by the way, the military is also under there, creating what seems to be like an AI supercenter. That's going to be massive. They're increasing DC power, I think, 500%. They're rerouting water over there so that they can cool the server farms. Going to be a military bunker, essentially, under there that I think houses some of the most high-tech, sophisticated servers that we actually have so that we're not outsourcing all of the executive agencies' AI production to places like Claude or to OpenAI or to Google. They're just there at the White House. So they have appealed it instantly. We'll take it up to the DC Circuit Court of Appeals. We'll see what they say about it. This thing might be being rapidly sent up to the Supreme Court. And then hopefully we can get that ballroom back in business, baby. We'll be here to cover it. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, now, my friends, we've got one final update on the day. And it's this one. It is, of course, something that is capturing a lot of attention out there. The Kirk-Robinson bullet motion. You see this one just dropped in the case of Utah prosecuting Tyler James Robinson, the alleged Charlie Kirk assassin. And this comes from his defense team. There are a bunch of headlines that are flying around on this thing. Things like, oh, it's not his bullet. And so therefore, he's not the shooter. And then on the other hand, there's, oh, the parents are going to come out and testify against him, which means he's absolutely the shooter. And I just want to pause and review the documents. Of course, you can make up your own mind about it, but this is still very early in this case. This is Tyler Robinson's motion to vacate or continue the preliminary hearing. And as we've talked about in this case before, in Utah, it is a preliminary hearing mandatory state. Unless the defendant waives this, then they have to have it. And I pulled up some documents. What exactly is a preliminary hearing in Utah? This comes from the State Association of Prosecutors and Public Attorneys, and we are at such an early standard. It's not like a trial. It's all just essentially to determine whether the case can continue to move forward. And they write for us that the preliminary examination, all we're trying to determine if there is probable cause. That's it. Can the case proceed at this early stage? This will go in front of the judge. And if the evidence that is presented to the magistrate, if he finds probable cause to believe that the crime that has been charged has been committed and that the defendant, in this case, this person has committed it, then they bind him over for a trial. Okay, so it's so early right now. The findings of probable cause may be based on hearsay. So these are out-of-court statements. Hearsay is generally not allowed at the trial level. And the burden of proof is on the state, right? The state has the burden of proof. The defendant may testify and may cross-examine a bunch of other people. But what we see is that under case law, what is the standard? Prosecutors bear the burden of proof. And there was, I thought, a paragraph. Where did I have this one? Dun, 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 dun. It's a preliminary hearing. Nothing in the Constitution shall preclude reliable hearsay evidence. And basically all we're trying to do is determine if there's probable cause that exists so that we can take this case over to the next step. This was a document that was explaining this for prosecutors, it looks like, and public attorneys. So you can go read this. What is a preliminary hearing? In many other states, we see that you can actually indict somebody, right? So you don't often have these preliminary hearings, which is why I think this is a little bit foreign for people. Many other states, they just indict you so that you don't have like this miniature trial. And the standard here is so low, it's whether there's essentially a fair probability that there's evidence of the crime, that it did occur, and that this defendant is the guy who actually committed it. Then they bind this person over for trial, and it proceeds from there. So the goal is baseless cases should be weeded out at this early stage, and all they're asking for in this motion is a continuance. They're trying to postpone this preliminary hearing from happening. They want more discovery and reasonable time to prepare for their defense. And so a couple of highlights from this document. It's 69 pages. They give us a summary about why they want a continuance. And then we're going to see some additional affidavits submitted by some of the expert witnesses that the defense has brought into the case. But here's what they tell us. On March 12th, counsel for the parties met and conferred about discovery. And based on the state's representation, the state intends to introduce and present discrete buckets of evidence. We love using buckets as a euphemism. Through 3 identified law enforcement witnesses. So we've got DNA evidence that's coming in and ballistics reports coming from the FBI and the ATF. We got phone and social media data. We've got testimony from law enforcement officials. And this is a big one that's capturing a lot of attention. Testimony by Mr. Robinson's parents and roommates. This is the defense writing. So in other words, the prosecutors will bring in the parents. We don't know what they're going to testify about. I've seen some headlines. Oh, well, that means like, obviously he's guilty because the parents are going to come testify against him. Doesn't even mean that they're cooperating essentially with the prosecutors, and they may be subpoenaed to come in here and testify and be forced to come in and just explain some basic things. Well, isn't it, where was Tyler Robinson the day of the shooting? Well, he was here. Okay, perfect. And then did you see him again between these hours, between this time and this time? No, I didn't. Okay, so it's possible that he left. Yeah, it's possible. So stuff like that. Doesn't mean that the parents and the roommate, Lance, the trans lover, are going to come out and implicate the guy. We don't know what they're going to say, just that the prosecutors have intimated that they're on a witness list. Now, the prosecutors are going to bring in a bunch of hearsay. The rules in Utah allow that. They're going to come out with scientific laboratory and forensic reports and other things. They're also going to have non-testifying peace officers and other yet unidentified or even currently unavailable lay witness statements. So people who are not testifying, but they said something and they'll just read that into the record. The state may also present 1 to 3 lay witnesses in this matter. Now, discovery in this case is incomplete. It's voluminous, and its processing of it is very complex. Materials from numerous local, state, and federal agencies identified thus far as involved in the case are filtered through the Utah State Bureau of Investigations. And what happens is the SBI will then send the materials to the Utah County Attorney's offices, where they are reviewed, Bates numbered, and redacted prior to being reviewed and sent over to the defense. So we got this little, flywheel, this process that's happening. One agency sends it to another, then they stamp it, and then send it to us. And so due to how these are provided, the defense paralegal must devote a significant amount of their time organizing it before it can be reviewed and even utilized by us. So at this stage in total, the defense has received approximately 20,000 files, excluding digital electronic discovery that we got on a hard drive. Now, of these, we've got documents and image files that have 61,000 pages. Audio files are 31 hours in length, more than 5,000 video files that contain more than 700 hours of video, which I presume contain some evidence of who the guy was walking up and down the stairs and more. The digital electronic discovery that was received on March 12 is 12 terabytes of data, okay? Gobs of data, over 600,000 files. The initial review of the digital electronic discovery is anticipated to take 60 days to complete, after which time it can be determined if the downloads are complete or if any additional time is needed. Now, the defense team, by the way, right, the defense wants to stall this out, I think generally speaking, as long as they possibly can. And they also have an obligation to not conduct a hearing if they're not up to speed on the case. The defense team has devoted, and part of the reason for the delay is to let the public kind of fervor around the case dissipate a little bit. Hopefully everybody moves on to something else is what they're thinking. And then we can come back and have a fairer trial without everybody who is, hyper focused on this case because it's a major topic of conversation, obviously. I'm not saying forget about Charlie Kirk or anything. I'm just saying that's kind of the strategy. You want distance between the crime. And will continue to devote significant resources to processing these things. However, the defense team is realistic, and the comprehensive review of what is missing is going to take hundreds of hours. And I think that is actually fair. I mean, this is a ton of evidence. So what is known at present is that Mr. Robinson has not received the forensic case files and the data necessary to investigate through the use of qualified experts the scientific reports that the state intends to use at the hearing. Mr. Robinson has diligently requested the disclosure of the forensic files and data underlying laboratory reports in an effort to get these materials to our experts. In his initial request for discovery, back in September 30th, 2025, he also requested materials about the forensics. And at an early stage in the case, you send, massive blanket motions, essentially, saying, I want everything. Obviously, that's going to be a part of it. Now, during the hearing that was held back on January 16th, counsel for the parties discussed the status of the laboratory files, and the county attorney from Utah, they informed the defense that they, too, were awaiting the files back in January. They said, we don't even have them. You don't have them. Okay. You don't have the lab files, and you're prosecuting him, and you have a hearing without the forensic evidence. So the defense said, that's interesting. So that was memorialized in a letter from defense counsel back to the state, where the defense lawyer said, well, we want to see the forensic downloads of the seized electronic devices as well. County says we don't have them yet. So during the meet and confer on March 12th, counsel again discussed the status of the lab files. UCAO, the prosecutors, indicated that the ATF, the feds, intended to provide their case files to Utah the following week, but offered the caveat that this did not mean that SBI would immediately provide it to the county. So ATF followed the bouncing ball, takes us over to the Utah Bureau of Investigation. Then from then, it goes back over to the county attorney. Then from the county attorney, it's got to go through the legal clerks and all the people, and then back over to Tyler Robinson's defense. After the meeting, defense counsel, and they're doing a good job, chronicling and papering the file. Oh, you don't have it? Oh, you don't have it? Oh, you don't have it? Great. Because that means we're going to ask for a continuance, which is where we're at right now. They also sent the county attorney an informal discovery request detailing what is missing about the scientific testing in this case. As of this filing, Robinson's team has still not received these materials. And they say, see, we've been focused and aggressive in trying to get it. They don't have it. They are confirming they don't have it. We've memorialized it all. That's why we need more time. They write, based on the rules of Utah, it provides a court may grant a continuance when there is good cause. And they're going to go through here and make the argument that there is a lot of good cause. They go through these criteria. Okay, we got these 5 factors that they're going to really flesh out here. We'll, breeze through it. But have you requested any other continuances before? Like, is this like your 3rd or 5th or 7th continuance? Like, how many more do you need? If you've asked for a lot, the likelihood that you'll get another one is low. If you've asked for none, the likelihood that you'll get one is probably higher. The balance convenience and the inconvenience to the litigants. Whether the delay is for legitimate reasons, like they just articulated, we don't have the lab evidence. Is it contrived or not? Whether the defendant contributed to this, like did you guys screw something up and you need more time because you didn't hire an expert witness or complete your interviews or something? And whether this will result in prejudice to their case. Now, they go through them, right? They say, no, there has been no request to continue. This is the first setting. This is a capital case. The court tentatively scheduled it before. We have never asked for one. And actually, when we were here in December, she said we needed another one. And turns out she's right. We can't go and process through all these things. And even the court said that the preliminary hearing date was not set in stone. And they have to have this, right? So they can't bypass the preliminary hearing by just going and indicting the person, which is what happens often. And I think we saw that, for example, in the church attackers case with, what's his face? Don Lemon. He, of course, was charged by direct complaint, or some of the defendants were, and then they bypassed that. So they didn't have to have a preliminary hearing. They just went and indicted them. That can't happen here in Utah. So how about the second factor? What about inconvenience? The testifying witnesses in the state are a very small number. They're local people. They may testify. It's not a burden for them at all. And the motion comes well in advance of the date. So any logistical inconvenience is de minimis. Now, while Robinson may seek to examine one or more of the forensic examiners who are employed by the government about the forensic evidence, the ATF and the FBI, the requests of their agencies that these employees be made available are still pending, and they sent requests over. We talked about this in another matter, the TUI protocol. You have to go and ask for permission. In fact, this was in the Fulton County, Georgia case. They went and asked, can we have Special Agent Ray Evans come testify? DOJ said, no, you can't. So all of those are still pending. So we may want to bring in the ATF and bring in the FBI, but we haven't even heard back from the DOJ on that. So there's likely no inconvenience to the council. 6 prosecutors, they're all capable. So this is not unreasonable. And the court is busy too. So you've already said your calendar's full. So it's not a problem for you. Now, the request for the continuance is not contrived. We actually don't have any evidence that we can actually use. We need discovery. And if we don't get discovery, then we as defense lawyers are doing a bad job. And so he may, this defense lawyers will often invoke this. Judge, I mean, if I can't do my job, my client, once he loses, is just going to come back and say that my attorneys had an ineffective assistance of counsel. They were ineffective. And so I have a claim against them. And if the Court of Appeals grants that, they're going to send this case back down to you, and then you're going to have to do this whole thing over again. They say this is not contrived, okay? It's legitimate for 3 reasons. 1, he hasn't gotten appropriate discovery, and we can't even proceed. We don't have forensic files or the data necessary for our experts to review. 2nd, Robinson will be denied his constitutional rights if his lawyers are not prepared. This case is complex. Now, the preliminary hearing is a fundamental right in Utah. They get the right to have it. State must establish a factual and legal basis for binding the defendant over for trial. It's like a mini little trial, just to say that we can continue to hold this guy, because if there's not even a legal basis and there's no facts to even hold this guy, you don't want to keep him in custody for another year or 2, such that he's basically being punished and then has to prove his innocence at trial. And the punishment, the process is the punishment in a way. So as long as, they have to just establish that there's a basis for it. And here, nothing prohibits this. Discovery is all a part of it. Prior to the preliminary hearing, procedure requires actual disclosure under Rule 16. Rules of Criminal Procedure. That's a big list of things: written statements, reports, physical evidence, written recorded statements, and more. The prosecution team includes law enforcement officials and more. Now here, there are materials known to the police and prosecution team that have not yet been provided. Doesn't mean they don't have them. And, some of these, detailed forensic reports, examinations, some of them can take a very long time. So while it is anticipated that discovery will be ongoing, we want materials that are known to be reasonably available to them. That is, materials known to be in the possession of law enforcement partners. Both the county and Mr. Robinson continue to await a vast amount of information relevant to review by the FBI and the ATF's DNA analysis, including, but not limited to, validation studies, crucial electronic data files, and a case file for a comparative bullet analysis and bullet lead analysis that is still in progress at the FBI. So that's been about 6 months now, wondering why they're not accelerating in a case like this. It's still in progress. We still don't have a comparative bullet analysis or a lead analysis. So case file protocols, none of that is available even to the county attorney. Okay, so the prosecutors don't even have it. ATF and FBI are still processing it. Now, what we're going to see about the bullet and the fact that they can't actually identify the connection of the bullet back to the gun, which doesn't mean it didn't come from that gun. It just means that it's inconclusive, in other words. They did get that report relatively quickly. So put a pin in this, we'll come back. And the case file and the protocols for a comparative bullet analysis that was conducted by the ATF. So even the prosecutors don't have it, the feds still have it. Now, identifying what's missing is an amorphous task. We don't know, right? There's stuff that there's stuff that you know that you don't know or don't have, and then there's stuff that you don't have that you don't know that you need. In addition, there are various other areas of forensic science discovery that are not yet complete and that must be completed so that we can decide whether to proffer any exculpatory evidence relating to those areas of the evidence. So, in other words, we need a continuance. There's too much that we don't have. We're entitled to this. That's a legitimate reason. And the United States Supreme Court has also said, this is a critical stage. This is not some throwaway hearing. Court of Appeals explained the same thing over in this case. And for us to actually do our jobs, counsel must have the evidence. Even the guidelines under the American Bar Association say we have to do a good job, and we can only do that if we have the evidence. Supreme Court has said it. Sixth Amendment entitles a defendant to rights, and so ABA guidelines. Here, we've been doing our best, says the defense. We've been diligent in attempting to fulfill our responsibilities, and this is quality legal representation. And look, in this case, Strickland, those are capital murder charges. And capital cases are different than other criminal cases, and so we can't proceed without the evidence. And the receipt of the discovery is not enough. Just like sending it to us and then holding a hearing is not enough. Very complicated. So we have to actually review it. We have to give it, right? If it takes them 6 months, then our experts also need to be able to do their own review and their own analysis. So you should give us the same time or, multiple additional days or weeks or months as necessary to do our job. They also say, our review has just begun. And defense counsel, in this case, have begun the multi-step process of requesting and reviewing the forensics and the discovery, locating and retaining the experts, providing the experts with the necessary materials, performing an aggressive expert re-examination mandated by the guidelines, consulting with experts. And it's all beginning. For instance, back in March, on March 12th, the state indicated that it intended to introduce the autopsy report into evidence. So the Charlie Kirk autopsy report will come into evidence, but they're not going to have any supporting expert testimony. Just drop it in there. The autopsy report was completed on September 16th, was not produced to the defense until November 13th. The autopsy photographs taken on September 10th were also not produced to the defense until March 18th. Rest in peace. Just sick. With the report and the photographs, the defense is now in a position to provide an independent pathologist with some of the discovery tools necessary to conduct an independent evaluation of the autopsy. But it is anticipated that they're going to identify additional things that they're going to need. And this happens all the time. right? So a defense expert looks at the initial tranche of evidence and says, well, I need this and I need this. And defense attorneys aren't forensic pathologists. So they ask for certain things. Then the actual expert looks at it and says, I need a bunch more things. Go ask for this, 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 and this, and this. As indicated in the March 25th informal discovery request by the defense, which was made after a complete review of the discovery, even more substantial discovery exists with respect to DNA and ballistic reports that the state says it's going to offer at the hearing without any supporting expert testimony. Because hearsay is allowed. They don't need to, it's not a full trial. It's just a preliminary hearing to see if you can bind somebody over. So a lot of this is normal. Now, the summary DNA reports that were produced by the FBI and the ATF both indicate that agencies recovered minute quantities of DNA of various items of evidence, which the reports opine consists of a mixture of up to 5 or more individuals. What? Both agencies employed commercial software called STR-Mix in an attempt to sort out the various contributors to the DNA sample. And there's a website for this company. It's called right here, Niche Vision, STR-Mix. It's expert forensic software that can resolve previously unresolvable mixed DNA profiles developed by leaders in the field. These things are interesting. Okay, so you have this big smorgasbord of just goop, and it says, well, there's a bunch of stuff in there. They can separate it out. How? Well, that's part of the question. You've got questions about the sample size, the methodology. There are assumptions that are being made. You want to know exactly how and what goes into the analysis. So it looks like this, right? And you see a lot of this type of stuff in various analysis of drugs or even DUI samples. You run your sample through a gas chromatography device or a mass spectrometer, and it separates the various components that are in it. The way that I think a good way to kind of think about it, let's say you have this hose, like a big hose, and it's just looped around, looped around, looped around, looped around. It's kind of the inside of a gas chromatography machine. And you put a bunch of stuff in there. You put some, like right at the beginning, you put some styrofoam little balls in there. You put some lead balls in there. You put some Skittles in there. You just put a bunch of crap in there, and you push a fluid through it. And the fluid is going to take all of those different things, and it's going to spin them around this long tube, like just a big long hose. Now, what happens when you do that is all of these things, the marbles, the lead balls, the Skittles, the styrofoam balls, the little wads of paper, the little spitballs, whatever you put in there, they're all going to separate out. Some are heavier than others. Some move faster through the tube than others do. And so they come out the other end at different intervals. And you can then validate what comes out the other end because if I just take and I don't put anything in this same tube and I just put lead balls in the tube and they just do loop-de-loops, then the lead balls come out at a certain time, every time, in between 1 minute and 1 minute and 2 seconds. All the lead balls come out because you're pushing like another liquid through there that then pushes them out. So then you've got different things coming out at different times, and you just run a bunch of tests. You say, oh, okay, so you run independently. When do the styrofoam balls come out? Okay, when did the Skittles come out? When do the marbles come out? And you can validate what is what. And so what you're kind of seeing is something, they're separating out the DNA. They're analyzing how things are responding to in the other end of the analysis. And you've got questions about how that all is being done. So this is on their website, and they're going to run us through exactly what's going on here. But it's very complicated, very technical stuff. You need experts and experts in this to do it. So now they're going to try to sort this out. Various contributors to the DNA sample. And the example I was giving was mostly for like for DUIs and volatiles in a blood sample. They leave that there. But they're essentially doing the same thing. How do you separate them out and then analyze them? Courts have excluded STR-Mix and similar genotyping software analysis when appropriate validation and use of reliable procedures has not been demonstrated. And of course, lots of questions are going to come up about that. And if they're admitting that there are 5 or more individuals, and I don't know exactly what samples they're talking about. Are these gun samples? Are these samples on the alleged screwdriver that was out there? Interesting. So that's curious. So they're saying we don't have any of the underlying processes that can validate what's right or not right. Lots of cases being cited here. Now, as these cases indicate, determining the number of contributors to a DNA mixture and determining whether the FBI and the ATF reliably applied, validated, and correct scientific procedures in doing that separation science, it's a complicated process, no kidding, which requires the assistance of various experts, including forensic biologists, geneticists, systems engineers, statisticians, all of whom must review and analyze these things. As that request happens, there are several areas of critical DNA discovery that have yet to be provided, including but not limited to the validation studies and electronic data files from both agencies. In the attached declaration of the defense's expert witness, she says, "I am Dr. Libby Johnson. I've been retained by attorney Michael Burt to be the expert. There are 2 federal agencies testing DNA in this case. I have received a large amount of discovery. I expect to receive more. I'll be working with other experts as well. Given the complexity of this case, the need to coordinate with other experts, and my existing schedule, it's my opinion I need 6 months. I have reviewed the discovery request and agree that this DNA material is necessary for my job." And so basically, again, all of this is in support of we need more time. They got this guy, Chief Analyst Dr. Don Crane. He says, I need a lot of things too. I need bench notes from the analyst. I need chain of custody records. Where'd the sample come from? This guy got it. He sent it to this guy, sent it to this guy, sent it to this guy, went impounded it into evidence. Then the analyst took it out of evidence. So it goes A to B to B to C, C to evidence, evidence to D, and D back to evidence. All of that needs to be documented. Another one, Dr. Crane, he says, I need a bunch of time and we need a continuance. He also says, our reviews sometimes identify concerns about the reliability of the lab's method, and crime labs are questionable, all right? Just like everything else in our government. This can then merit the fact that I need more information. This will take another several weeks and more. So it is evident that the defense has been diligent in seeking available DNA discovery. We're getting experts. We're formulating a reasonable plan. Look at all these people who are on our team now. What is preventing that plan from going forward is the incomplete status of the DNA discovery. We've outlined that March 25th. We need more evidence before we can process it. Now, this is the big one that I think made the Daily Mail headlines right here. Regarding the firearm evidence, the defense has been provided with an ATF summary report, which indicates that the ATF was unable to identify the bullet recovered at autopsy to the rifle allegedly tied to Mr. Robinson. So they couldn't make a match. Doesn't say it was not the bullet that was in. It just says it's inconclusive, essentially. Could have come from a different gun. Could have come from a different shooter. Or it could have come from that very rifle. So I think the defense will obviously, wait to see what else they get on this, but we've only gotten a summary. Summary says can't identify it. That's not a good fact for the prosecution. They would love the ATF to have a nice chain here to say ATF, oh yeah, bullet came from the gun came from Tyler Robinson, and Tyler Robinson's DNA matches the trigger. And we can validate it, follow the bouncing ball very easily. We're having some issues with that because now we have bullet that is, questionably connected to the gun. It's unknowable. It's inconclusive. And we got apparently 5 other, 5 DNAs, samples that are all kind of mashed into one. And again, we don't know what these samples are coming from, but it's not as clear cut as the prosecution would want. So although the state has not indicated an intent to produce this report at the hearing, the defense may want to and offer the testimony of the ATF firearm analyst as exculpatory evidence to say, oh, well, you can't show that that came from the gun. And of course, he might come back and have a very good answer to this. ATF analyst might come back and say, well, yeah, it fragmented into 100 pieces. It's all over the place. So we can't put it back together. I think there was a movie where they did that. They got all the various fragments and they put it back together. And then he got a fingerprint off of it from loading like Batman or something. He's like, it's not Batman. Okay. So there's a good reason. Doesn't mean that it didn't come from Tyler Robinson's gun. He says, I just can't pin it on that exactly because of all of these explanations. Is that normal? Yeah, it's very normal. It happens all the time. How many times does that happen? Happens every, every fifth analysis that I do. The bullet fragments, I can't try it. So it might be very explainable. But they say, we only have this summary. We don't have the underlying analysis that he created. And so in order to make this determination, it is necessary for the defense and the firearm expert to review the case file and the protocols relating to his exam. Did you screw something up in the exam? That's why you can't connect it? That has not been provided yet. The state has also indicated that the FBI is in the process of conducting a second comparative bullet analysis, as well as a bullet lead analysis, but that analysis is not complete. And these analyses are. Again, until the defense receives the case files and the protocols relating to these and has them independently evaluated by the expert, they will not be in a position to assess the reliability of this if either the state or the defense wants it. So again, it's more unknown. There are also several categories of other incomplete forensic discovery outlined in our request. Until we get the case files and protocols related to these and has them independently evaluated, we are not in a position to assess the reliability of this evidence if either side decides to offer it. Importantly, in a capital case, we have a lot of issues and a lot of things we can challenge. A state cannot avoid this constitutional requirement and shift this to the defense to make it their burden. The requirement that a Utah defendant not be held in prolonged custody until we have this hearing is articulated in this case. And as demonstrated, we're doing everything we can, but we just don't have the evidence that we need. So then we get the next factor. It says he didn't have anything to do with this delay. As described, we're actually working very hard. We've made all the efforts to make sure we're doing everything we can. We verbally communicated. We've communicated in writing. So Tyler Robinson is not the reason for the delay. So grant us a continuance. And 5, finally, if you don't give us a continuance, it's going to hurt him legally. He has a constitutional right to review the evidence before this hearing happens, where the evidence that has not yet been produced is both highly technical and scientific. We need to review it. And so there will be prejudice against him if you do not grant us a continuance, because he'll be able to come back and say, you were unprepared and you didn't actually follow the rules before you had this hearing. So none of the 5 factors leave a basis for us to deny the hearing. We should have a continuance. The state's decision to proceed with forensic evidence is its own, but it can't do that without giving us a copy. We need to see it too if they want to use it. So unless the materials here have been produced to him by April 17th, the date on which this motion is set for a hearing, the preliminary hearing should be vacated until they have been. And if they have been produced by that time, the hearing needs to be postponed no less than 6 months in order to permit him a meaningful period of time to review. By the way, I think they're right about that. I think that the judge is probably going to grant them that continuance. Like, the judge does not want to rush this. We've already seen that. So they're being, they're very on top of their request. Even the county attorney doesn't have a lot of this information. And the judge is not going to want to rush this, I don't think, so that it can come back and he can get bitten if they make a claim that he didn't have his due process not afforded an opportunity to gobble up evidence and present a cohesive defense. This is a very cautious judge based on what we've seen, and I have a feeling he's going to grant this and postpone it. Maybe not 6 months. I would imagine that he's going to reset it for a status conference at some point, and we'll see what the prosecutors say in response to this, saying, oh, no, we'll have all this evidence to you in 2 weeks. It's on its way. But this is the filing as it stands. So this is a declaration from one of the lawyers. Let me show you some of the actual primary documents that came through. This one, Richard Novak, sent this one out. He says, the ATF employees whose testimony that we want, this looks like a TUI request, over to the ATF and the DOJ, saying we'd like to interview these people and have them testify. We've got this woman, Oliver Carner, a fingerprint specialist, a firearm and tool mark examiner, forensic biologist, and a fingerprint specialist. And this is curious. So the general subject matters that we want Ms. Oliver, the forensic biologist, to testify to are reports back from September 15th. and another report from December 11th. So like these people got their reports out pretty quickly. More specifically, she'll testify. Yeah, so Tui here. The ATF so these are government employees. So she got a report out pretty quick, September 15th and December 11th. About all of her training, DNA analysis. Then they got testimony they want from this guy. Testimony by tool mark examiner called Samantha, this gal. We want her to testify about her September 17th report, about her experience, background, how she conducted analysis, what they did in connection with her analysis. And they want the fingerprint guy to come in. So this report was also quick. So the firearms and tool mark examiner got a report out. Charlie was killed on the 10th. So by the 17th, they got something out to them. And her conclusions based on the analysis addressed in her report, the technical review of her analysis, and more. So these reports came out pretty quickly. Then the fingerprint specialist had his report out December 22nd. Says about his training and methodologies. We're happy, of course, to coordinate the timing of their testimony, but without authorization from ATF, if they have authorization, they can contact me directly, and then we can talk to them about their testimony. Then we get these other guys from the FBI, or gals, Amanda and Monty Swank, forensic examiners. They say, we'd like to have them come testify. We write to request the appropriate FBI or DOJ official release them so that they can actually talk to us. These reports also came out quickly too. September 15th, September 17th, these two reports. One report refers to the subject as Tyler Robinson, and the other refers to the victim as Charles James Kirk. Specifically, what she did in conducting the analysis, DNA analysis, databases, not a lot of details here. General stuff, methodologies, software, databases, more. This guy had a report out 9/15. We're happy to communicate with them about all that. Here are some of the materials that were released to us. So 19,612 looks like files produced on a rolling basis. So all the way from 10/10 last year all the way up till about 3/18 not too long ago. Another exhibit, total number of files there, Exhibit D. Documents and images, 61,000 pages. Audio, 31,000 hours. Videos is 66 compressed video files of unknown duration, nearly 700 hours there. Other files, CSVs, Excel, I think the Excel spreadsheets are also in there. List of agencies who were also involved. All these police departments, Sheriff's Office, BYU, multiple police agencies, UCAO investigations. And then a second request for DNA and forensic evidence goes to Ryan McBride from Michael Burt. He says, hi there, we're still missing DNA discovery. I have now had a chance to review all of what we've gotten, and in light of that, I set forth this letter. We're going to need standard DNA discovery beyond our initial discovery motion. You send a blanket motion, they send you stuff back, you say that I need more than that, I need these things too. And so here's what they want. Kind of a normal blanket motion. I want the case file. I want, these are probably some specifics. To date, we've been provided the case files for these labs, but not for ATF DNA lab reports. So they got the summary maybe, but not the lab report that was already created back on September 15th. Some of this stuff they got turned around very quickly. Now, the underlying analysis, I guess, is working its way through. Your SOPs, your instructions, your protocols. We got the FBI's DNA SOP, standard operating procedures. We have not been provided the ATF DNA SOP. We want it. Also, we want the STR stuff to break apart the DNA, see what belongs to who. We want a complete database, copies of all the things, laboratory notes. We have not gotten any of that material. When was this dated? Let's see, March 25th, so not long ago. So still not gotten any of that. We want the STR data. We want the chain of custody, log entries for each item. We've not been provided any of this material except for basic chain of custody reports that indicate nothing about storage conditions, etc. Please provide copies of all computer data files. They've got none of that. Probabilistic genotyping output to say whether it's actually Tyler Robinson, nothing there. How about software and macros? Any software, commercial software programs you used in DNA analysis, nothing there. Macros, anything from the STR mix source code, the extended output for these things, the developmental validation records, internal validation records, and their user manual, nothing there. Did you troubleshoot anything? Right, this is standard stuff. Did you have to take the machine out of service? Did it not work the first time? We want to know. We want computer resets, reboots. We want any changes that were made, any notes of communications or instrument failures, and more. Copies more of the mixture analysis that was undertaken in order to do the DNA testing. We have not been provided with any of that. No internal validation documents from the DNA. Any corrective actions. You haven't confirmed that you've sent those, or that any, if there were no corrective actions, you'd say this is in compliance with discovery item number 13. Here's the logs. As you see, there are no corrective actions that were taken. Information on the uniqueness of genetic profiles. Records and documentation of any 9 locus or more matches between individuals in a convicted offender databases who were typed. All records of matches between individuals with 9 or more areas of connections. Not been provided any of that data. Any proficiency tests to show that you actually know how to work the machine. None of that. Any accreditation. Licenses and certifications of accreditation. Not gotten any of that. Any audits of the machines to validate that they're actually functioning. Nothing there. No laboratory resumes or job descriptions of any person who was doing the DNA testing. Nothing there. And here's more about the firearm. Now, we have no reports, case files, protocols, proficiency tests of any analyst or CVs of any of the reviewers who did the bullet analysis. When the work is completed, we want a copy. We have been provided a summary FBI report dated September 14th, which references information provided by the Domestic Strategic Unit about the writing on the bullet casings found at the campus. We request all information about that. We have received 3 bullet tool mark examination reports from the ATF, September 17, 2025, October 6, 2025, and February 25th, 2026. We have no case file, so summaries, right? Sounds like. But no case files, protocols, proficiency test of the reviewers, CVs of the analyst, developmental internal validation data about these reports. We request that material. Latent fingerprints. We have received 1 latent fingerprint report from the FBI September 15th. Like, these were created quickly. We got a cover page. We got a document titled Asset Details. We got copies of known Tyler Robinson fingerprints, photos of these items. We got a Photoshop action description document entitled Asset Details. Additional photographs of latent and known prints. We've also received the FBI's latent print protocols. We got the CVs of 2 examiners, Kusnova and Swank. Unclear whether we've got the entire case file, though. No indication in the materials provided of what points of comparison the examiners were relying on to make the match. We want the entire case file, IDs of the points of comparison that you're relying on. We also request proficiency tests of all the analysts. Lastly, we request any photographic or documentary output as well. We also got 2 latent fingerprint reports from the ATF. Again, the September 15th, December 22nd. No case files, validations. We request that material. Got 1 latent fingerprint report from the Utah Bureau of Forensic Services. Again, no case files, none of that. Shoe impression. We have received 1 shoe impression report from the ATF. Dated October 6, 2025. No case files or any of the background there. We want that. We have received 1 questioned document report from the FBI from November 7th. No case files there. And we've sent a cover letter over there. We want more information on some of these analysts, Kristen Knapp, Brittany Swisher, in supplemental discovery. You guys are very thorough. That was sent by his lawyer not long ago. Then we got this. This is one of the forensic bioinformatics people. I think this was quoted in the motion. I have separately provided you a list of materials that we need to review. Following the receipt of those materials, I need 2 to 3 weeks to conduct an initial review, and then I need more time after that initial review. I'm here, Dan Crane. I'm an analyst. I need more information. Here's a declaration of Johnson. I'm a very credentialed person. I was a senior forensic scientist here. I've been retained. There are 2 agencies doing DNA analysis. Given the complexity of this case, I'll need 6 months. We saw that in the filing, and that's the motion. So, yeah, interesting things here. So, long story short, the defense wants a continuance, and they put together, I think, a very compelling case to get that continuance. And it sounds like the Utah County Attorney is still waiting on evidence, according to the defense, even from the ATF and the FBI. The defense saying, we're asking for it, but they can't give it to us because they don't have it. And, I think you can speculate about why that is. You could, and nobody really knows, but you could say, well, maybe they should prioritize this case and get those analyses done. And maybe that is suspicious that they haven't done that. By contrast, maybe they just haven't done that. And forensic exams of various varieties can take a long time. And some crime labs, take like a year at least to do these things. And if you have to do it and then have somebody also do it and then validate the two, it can take even longer. So you can impute, I think, nefariousness to it, or you can just impute this to just standard bureaucratic processing, which of course happens. But some interesting updates from them. And of course, this is a defense framing, and their main point right now is to get a continuance. They want 6 months is what they said. And I think that's something the judge is going to strongly entertain. So this case is not going to, I think, proceed with any expediency. So we're going to be here monitoring it for quite a while. But as you see, I think that there's, multiple ways to interpret these things. And the fact that the parents are testifying doesn't mean that they're testifying as friendly witnesses who are going to incriminate Tyler Robinson, and it's case closed. He's the shooter because the parents are going to come out against him and say, yeah, he did it. Don't think that's what we're seeing. In a similar vein, the fact that the bullet, according to what they say, doesn't one-to-one match the rifle doesn't mean that it didn't come from that rifle. It just means at this stage we're at an inconclusive status, and there is going to be a lot more discovery on this, and this is going to be a battle. It's going to be a long, long haul. And so, as always, man, we miss Charlie Kirk. We pause and pray for him and his family, and we miss him. Miss him out here in America. So prayers up for Charlie. Never want to lose sight of that. He's up there in heaven looking down upon us. But my friends, we're going to keep our eye on this one and continue to review the documents, review the evidence best we can as neutral, sober observers of the case. Hopefully we can flesh this out together. Thank you for joining us and subscribing to our channel as we do. All right, friends. A lot of work to continue on that one. So if you're just getting here, quick recap. We talked about some good things today. Of course, we had this one. Of course, we had Fulton County with their bombshell filing. We have the state election board dropping bombs over on the Fulton County fraudsters, the board of commissioners here. Shout out to the state election board out there in Georgia. Happy to see that they are coming out and now getting into the fray. We'll wait to see what the judge says, but now parties are supposed to now meet and confer, and we'll come back on that one. We also got Trump with a new executive order on elections, and it's a doozy. Can't wait to see what the fallout is on that. We heard from the president himself. The ballroom was blocked by a Bush judge who looks like that ogre from that Ernest movie, Ernest Scared Stupid. The horrifying movie as a kid, I remember it. The appeal already filed. The decision came down today. The president sounds like he's going to just keep on building and building away, but we'll see what ultimately happens very soon. Then we talked about the Charlie Kirk filing, lots of headlines flying around it. So we wanted to spend some time just going through the document. I think that being transparent about what's actually going on in here is a good way for all of us to process it. And so, my friends, it's been a beautiful stream. Thanks for joining us a little bit late. on the day. Of course, we're moving here and got boxes piling up all over the place, but we're settling in, and hopefully soon we got the official studio that we'll build and we'll be in the basement, and we can really blare out those spotlights. Should be fun. But now let's hear from you. I saw some great donos come in. Tomorrow morning, we're not going to be able to cover the birthright citizenship case live. The boy doesn't know how to use his calendar and schedules things wrong, but we will come back tomorrow in the evening and we'll get into it again. We'll have a member stream. We'll see, if we can hit some of the highlights of the birthright citizenship oral arguments. I'm disappointed that we won't be able to do it live, but we'll debrief it tomorrow afternoon. So that's a big one. We've been waiting for this one, and we'll see you back here tomorrow afternoon. But now, I saw some great donos and some love coming in. And friends, thank you for sending these in. Let's see what we've got on the day. We had some good ones. Hey, 9/11 Scholar, good to see you. Who else do we got over here? Yeah, oh, it's Trump. It's Trump. Hey, it's Trump, man. Trump has got some moves, man. This is a real video, I think, after he issued that executive order. Probably real. I wish it was. Hey, Freedom Forever, what's up? Welcome aboard. Our newest supporter, Mick Murray in the house. Welcome aboard. Kneel for Justice, man. Look at all these new membos we got. Amazing membos. We'll see you tomorrow morning. We had a good stream this morning, trying to navigate that Supreme Court decision this morning. A lot of thoughts on that. So check that out if you want to check that out. Freedom, good to see you. McMurray, Kneel for Justice, great to have you. Thank you for joining up and becoming new membos. Ruby Hoove brought in a new membo. Don Hastings, our newest of new membos. Welcome aboard, Don. Ruby, thanks for bringing Don into the fam. Ruby, hey, have a good one. Like, subscribe, and share. Like, subscribe, and share. Don't do it for me. Do it for Ruby Hoove. John says, still yelling at the neighbors, I see. Oh, at this wall? Yeah. Still like yelling into them. Yeah, and we got yelled at by the neighbors. We had our U-Haul pods delivered today. So your boy unpacking all day. Or not actually unpacking, just unloading the boxes. Mama G and Alexis are some of the unpacking. But, man, yeah, it was a U-Haul day. And I certainly hauled a lot. But yeah, we're still yelling at the neighbors, and they yelled at us. Is this U-Haul going to be? How long is this going to be here? Like an hour. Give us a break, okay? Give us like 1 hour. We'll be out of here soon. You can't do this. You're blocking the. We know. We're moving fast. Can you see the sweat dripping from our brow? Go back inside. You're not even doing it. Anyways, hey, Ruby Hoove, thank you. Another one. Brensdim in the house. Welcome aboard, Brensdim. Great to have you. Ruby, thanks for bringing in new membos. That's Miss Ruby to you. Thank you, Ruby. Chubby, I do find it curious. So to who authorized the hiring of these outside counsel for the county? They should have their own legal department to handle these very legal situations. Yet somehow there was authorization to hire and pay these outside lawyers. Yeah, why isn't Fannie doing this? She's the Fulton County attorney. Doesn't she have civil lawyers in her civil division who can go handle this? I'd love to see how that came about. I'd imagine some community members could file a complaint over it as well. That's a great idea, actually. Your boy's been thinking about how can we file more FOIA requests? Maybe there's a Georgia FOIA filing process. Good to ask. Ruby Hoove. Wow. And good to see you, Chubby. Thank you for the dono and great question. Ruby. Wow. The amount of shucking and jiving is really amazing. They seem to think that we're not too bright. Yeah, and they just think that you'll just forget about it. You'll just move on. No, it's old. It's 2020. Trump's the president again. Well, we care because it's a fraudulent election if they're allowed to commit fraud. And they were. And now even the state board can't even get answers from them. So it's like never ending. Good to see you, Ruby Hoove. 9/11, what's going on? 9/11 Scholar. Rob, your monthly dividend check, $19.11. Very appropriate for 9/11 Scholar. You rock. Thank you, 9/11 Scholar. We appreciate the dono. And we like monthly dividends. We appreciate that. Ruby Hoove, even another one. 2 steps, 1 seps in the house. 2 steps, 1 seps in the house from Ruby Hoove. Thank you, Ruby. Welcome aboard, 2 steps. Cliff Norman. Rob, this supports Robert Barnes' stated opinion. At any time in Georgia, they should focus on signature matches on mail-in ballots as opposed to the Dominion voting machine. The former was easy to investigate as opposed to voting machines where you cannot see the source code. Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani got derailed on Dominion, while 30% of the votes were unchecked mail-in ballots. Trump only needed 12,000 votes in 2020. Yeah, I have a suspicion that there was a poison pill. That there might be something there with that Venezuelan dictator who wrote that, release. That might be real. We got Maduro now. We have the other guy who's former director of intelligence for the Venezuelans who says, yeah, no, we were rigging stuff. So they might have been onto something, but I would agree. And I think it also supports the idea that they deleted the ballot images. Because if you have the ballot images, you just run them through an algorithm and it just matches, not the signatures on the ballot, because you're normally signing the envelope, right? But on the ballot, if you have, weird, the example's a coffee stain. If you have a coffee stain that just kind of is weird and it shows up twice on 2 different ballots, that was a double scan ballot. So you delete the images so you can't connect those dots. Digital inflation. And then the digital votes, you still have a digital number, but not the ballots, which is why you need to go seize the physical ballots so that you can actually match them. Shout out to Robert Barnes. Hey, amazing disgrace. Didn't several of the corrupt election workers receive the Medal of Freedom from Biden and win a defamation suit? Yeah, they did. Yeah, it was Ruby. Wasn't her name Ruby something? Pretty sure. Pretty sure, or something like that. And Rudy Giuliani's bankrupted. They gave him millions of dollars. They said that they were scanning ballots wrong. Investigations and hopefully prosecutions need to be done. The sooner the better, though it will probably take time, says Ruby Hoove. Yeah, I know. It's taking a lot of time. And want it now. Indictments now. But we don't even have any U.S. attorneys who can do the indicting, because Chuck Grassley. Tony Hay Muckets. 5 new membos coming in. Lovey Brown. Latravius Hutchins. What's up, Latravius? Good to have you here. Welcome aboard. J-Man True Seeker. Silver Crypto in the house. And Rich H. All joining up as our newest membos, courtesy of Tony Hay Munkets. Hey, it's the Munkets. Good to see you, Tony Hay. Hey, vote Jeb 2028. Guac Bowl Jeb? Oh. Trump could make the argument that the bunker falls under national security and therefore decision falls under the National Command Authority and not some trust. This isn't even in the Constitution. Vote Jeb 2028. Jeb coming back? Great. Guac Bowl Jeb? Please clap. Please clap, Jeb. Great job, Jeb. We love you. Well, anyway, vote Jeb. There are a lot of people in Dearborn who are sad. Oh, no. Democratic Senate hopeful Abdul al-Sayed said he needed to stay silent on the Khomeini killing because many of Michigan's Muslim voters are sad. Wow. Anyway, vote Jeb 2028. Great. Oh, gosh, what a country. Says, vote Jeb. Uganda willing to fight in war alongside Israel. Military chief says. And this is Uganda hitting the Iranians with a steel chair. We are live monitoring the situation in the Strait of Hormuz. And what's this? It's Uganda with a steel chair. All right. Here's another one. We are so back. Guac Bowl Jeb. Tomorrow night, vote Jeb. Artemis blasting off tomorrow night. It's going to be amazing. Quad Cam. I give it 5 more years before judges start using emojis in their court orders. Probably not wrong. Yeah. Yeah, once Gen Z gets up in there, it's going to be brutal. A lot shorter ones, too. BRB, you are denied. With all in shorthand. With thumbs down emoji. Great. Vote Jeb. No tread on Jeb. From Vote Jeb 2028. One old guy. Jerome Turd Ferguson Powell and District Court Judge Richard Dick Leon. Yeah, probably his nickname. DC Dick Leon. So what's going on? Holly's here. The group suing over the ballroom using government money to sue the government. Also, didn't we win an appeal on this? No, we're appealing it right now, Holly. Seems anti-American and petty. Keep crushing it. Thank you, Holly. It is. It's just if you if you don't like Trump, then you are opposed to anything he does, even if it's good for the future of America. Every president has wanted a ballroom, but Trump does it. It's just terrible. Vote Jeb. Yeah, we're getting into the back and forth on the Charlie Kirk thing. We're avoiding that. Lori Pipkin, Trump's right. It's an embarrassment not to have the ballroom and no taxpayer money. Besides, what are they going to do? Leave a hole? That's what they want. They want a big sore spot on the, they want a blemish on the face of the executive branch. Lori Pipkin, that's exactly what they want. They don't want Trump to get into the mix and have a success because it's going to make them look terrible because they can't build anything. Another one from Pete Hegseth on the helicopter outside of Kid Rock. We got Debbie. Trump just said he's going to SCOTUS tomorrow for the oral argument. Too bad there won't be cameras. Are you serious? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. It's going to be wild out there. Debbie, oh, thank you for the heads up on that. That's amazing. Will you please check the fundraiser for Shielded by Power and give us an update tomorrow? It says 1950 collected, 150K pledged against a 50,000 goal, but that goal hasn't been met. I'm confused. Shielded by Power, yeah, that's the Hunter Biden documentary, which is at shieldedbypower.com. It says 1950 collected, 150 pledged against a $50,000 stated goal, but that goal hasn't been met. I'm confused. And yeah, we can do an update on that tomorrow, Debbie. Check them out. There's tickets there. If you want to come join us for the launch party in DC, we're going to be there, my beautiful wife and I. I think it's in September. Should be great. Debbie, thank you for that. Thank you for even thinking about those guys. They're doing great work over there. Hey, what's up? Emors SK. Modern machines producing 1,000 barrels the same. You can't match a bullet to a gun, only to a model type and or barrel series. Cases and pending cases on this very issue. You can Google it. Can't match a bullet to a gun, only to model type and or barrel series. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. Like, did it come from that gun? But if it came from the same type of gun, right, I think there's some good evidence there. Hey, Rob, please raid Jim Tells You. We'll do that. Thank you for the heads up on that. Jim, happy to do that. Hey, what's up? Emors. Bullet matching forensics is BS. Scientists looked into this recently and proven it's subjective. Judges have tossed this in several cases nationwide, working its way through the courts now as junk. Look it up. I'm sure we will. Yeah, it's going to come up. I'm sure the defense is going to file a bunch of things, but they may not have to if the ATF can't even validate where it came from. It may be a moot point. They're not even, it sounds like, according to the defense, they're not even making the claim. Milo, similarity, by the way, Robinson and Guthrie cases. Nancy Guthrie lab faces challenges with mixed DNA. We're entering day 22 since 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie vanished from Tucson. The scientific search, I think it's longer than that now, right? Has hit a roadblock in Florida. Forensic experts are struggling to isolate mixed DNA samples found at Nancy Guthrie's home, a process that could take months. Not uncommon for a round that went through a human body, especially if it traveled through tissue, to say conclusively that it's tied to a specific firearm, because by nature, the projectile is supposed to transfer all of the energy, disintegrates into the body. The fact that it went through several bone structures, there was going to be very little left of it. Experts debunk the ballistics claim. Unable to identify it is not the same as ruling it out. Yeah, that's right. The Robinson defense argues inconclusive report could be exculpatory. It's just basically inconclusive. Doesn't mean it didn't come from that weapon. Here are two good articles on the bullet forensics being crap science. Man, thank you for these links. That's from Emors SK in the house. Here you go. Field of firearms forensic is flawed. Ineffectiveness of the consistent with judicial imitation. I guess my point is they're not even trying to make the claim that it came from the gun. They're just saying it's inconclusive. We don't know. We can't tell. It's, the evidence is too broken to make the connection. Oversoul was taken. Welcome aboard as our newest supporter. Oversoul was taken. Great to have you. We'll look forward to meeting you. Hey, Bean. Rob, can we raid Jim Tells You? Absolutely. Happy to do that. Definitely happy to do that. We'll do that. Hopefully he's kicking off live here very soon. And this one's taken. Hey, what's going on? Oversoul was taken. Thank you for covering these cases, especially the election issues. It has been 10 years since they spied on our president. We want justice. Yeah, look, they prosecuted people. The election was stolen. They said it was not stolen. People were there protesting the stolen election. They told all of us that we were crazy, that it was all settled in a court of law. Nobody investigated themselves. People went to jail for this. They tried to put the president in jail for this. And now they want everybody to just move on. Oh, it's old. Shut up about it. It's like, no. I want accountability for these people. I appreciate that there's interest in covering these things because it goes to the root core of our self-governance. If our elections are not accurate, we're not actually governing ourselves. The people who are running the elections are governing us and installing their preferred leaders. So it goes, it's basic, fundamental to our entire existence as a nation. It drives me nuts that actually not more energy around it. Should have prosecutions already. Anyways, friends, thank you so much for sending those in. We appreciate all those comments. Let's say what's up to some comments on X, on Locals, and on X, and then we'll leave it there on the night. Hey, Elliot, Doc Master. Man, so getting us prepped up for the birthright stuff tomorrow. Said Senator George Williams of Oregon is describing the reservations in his state during the debate on the Civil War. Good quote here from Congress. Screenshots for more documents. All available. Go check out philippix.substack.com. Elliot has done some of the best research on the birthright stuff that I've seen out there. So I'd encourage you to check that out. Look at all this. Get up to speed on all of these issues. What is subject to the jurisdiction? What does it mean? What does it mean to the territories? What did it mean to the Indians? What does it mean now? Good stuff. Elliot, philippix.substack.com. Check out those details. Dan shared the order on the Fulton County case. Says, read the comments about the Fulton County case. Yeah, after all, they told the DOJ and the FBI to make paper airplanes out of the paper. No, just keep the documents. No, we don't need to make paper airplanes out of them. We'll just count them and review them and then prosecute you for them. More on the birthright citizenship stuff. Questions presented at philippix.substack.com. Elliot, you're the man. And yeah, just another Albertan. Says conversion therapy is Orwellian doublespeak. Prohibiting conversion therapy means prohibiting therapy contrary to the sexual transition. It was funny and frustrating to listen to my analysis this morning. It was Colorado for crying. Yeah, but I still think the rule laid down by the Supreme Court now means if you have a constitutional free speech right to offer, let's say, talk therapy to de-trans or to de-gay somebody, as the holding was, then the transers also have a constitutional right to trans the kids only through talk and to gay the kids. That's my point, is that if you have a free speech right as a professional talking to minors, it goes both ways. It's a two-way street. And I think that there's a lot more aggressive pro-transers and pro-gayers out there who are the talk therapists than there are the, let's say, Christian or religious de-transers or de-gayers. That's my only point. Colorado obviously can pass a law that prohibits it. Now, Colorado's problem was that it was going one direction. But what if you're a conservative state and you want to ban that so that you can't convert the kids, right? You can't trans them up. That's also prohibited now, I think, because the trans or talk therapists are just going to say they have a free speech right to now trans your kids. That's my concern. And I still stand by that concern. Now I think you're going to see a lot of that. It's a loss in this case, but the broader rule, I think, is going to be exploited by their side. It goes both ways. Everyone's got the free speech rights. And I would personally like to see it go a little bit more towards preventing the conversion of the kids from being, you can do it to minors. It's insane. We're going to see what happens ultimately. I think it was the right call ultimately because it was only allowing one direction. But now that it's opened up and now that it's a free speech right, now you have talk therapists that have a free speech right to trans your kids. That's how I think the rule is. You have a free speech right to not do it, right, to convert them the other way, or to prevent that conversion. But I think it goes both ways, which is concerning to me. So, Sadie, what's going on in this one? There's Trump. There's Trump, man, walking out of just blowing something up. And he's on an airplane over there. What did I just do? Clicking all over the place. Thank you, Sadie, for the pictures. Amazing to see. Amazing to see you. Cliff Norman, as Stalin noted, voting is important. It is only, yet it's not important. Voting is not important. It is only important who ultimately counts the votes. Right. The fraudsters do that. Hey, Sharpening Man in Texas, man, thank you for this. Absolutely stellar tonight, Rob. Locals is glitching. You're kidding. Locals is glitching. Say it ain't so. Yeah, his latest drink, we don't survive court, and he flipped it. Tiger Woods is stepping away from golf. Okay. Good idea. Good to see you. Amazing. All right, friends, it's been a beautiful stream. Let's say what's up to our friends on X, and then we'll call it a night. And we'll be back tomorrow to get into it again. Perfect. All right, so let's see who's joining us. Trump's going to be there tomorrow. We got one comment from NeuroD. Says, come on, join us, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Great to see you, NeuroD. Thank you for plugging our locals community. Great to have you. All right, friends, it's been a beautiful stream. Yeah, right. Minors are supposed to be protected from adult content and discussion unless a parent or guardian allows it. Yeah, it goes both ways, one old guy, like a saxophone. Yeah, so it was, I think, a right outcome in Colorado because that only was a one-way street. But now I think, you know, like what if a teacher just wants to start teaching transgenderism to like the students? And that's my free speech right. I'm a professional. There's studies that say I'm allowed to do this. And you have a state law that says, no, we actually don't want therapists to talk to 8-year-olds about transing. You say, we want to ban that. Supreme Court says, no, they have a free speech right, just like the other lady does. So, you know, there might be other ways around that. I think that right now the limitation is like they can't, like the trans are not a protected class under the other case. So Amy Coney Barrett said, you know, that they don't get special, like intermediate scrutiny when it comes to conversions, like the physical and drug conversions. This said, professionals talking to essentially minors have a free speech right. And this was a Christian woman who was trying to, you know, basically, you know, use the faith, I think, to prevent them from becoming that way. But if she has the free speech right, then I think it's going to go both directions. So, and by the way, man, I think there's a lot more transers up there in the medical establishment than there are people on our side. So it makes me nervous about as a long-term rule. The right decision in this case, but we just let the kids just grow up here without wondering, am I a girl? Am I a boy? It's insane. Anyways, disgusting stuff. Anyways, friends, what a lovely stream it has been. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back on time to get into it again tomorrow afternoon. We'll have some birthright fallout. I think it's going to be a doozy, and we're excited to get into it again. So we'll pause here for the night. Big thanks to our amazing mods and meme smiths who mod the fort down for us and keep things nice and orderly around here, including, of course, our mods. Donut Mind Me. We got Muffin Rando in the house. John, great to see you. K Beans in here. We got Carrie B, Neuro D, Janek, Dog Digger over on the Rumbles. Got Geegum Geegum, Elliot, Docmaster. You have his Substack. And Just Rhonda, purveyor of fine emojis. All joining us on the day. And so, friends, we'll pause here for the evening. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll get into it again. If you're on YouTube, we'll send you over to Jim Tells You, and we'll be back tomorrow to get into it again. And in order to do that appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down on our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night. Sleep very well. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. We brought the heat with every chatting line. Together we exposed corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers. We won't be denied. Watching the watchers. Eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care.